Chapter 91. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Xu Ning, who couldn't believe the sight, lost his appetite. At night, Xu Heng asked him what he wanted to eat, whether it was just porridge or soup. He should at least have something in case his stomach feels uncomfortable later. Xu Ning did not talk to him. Not only did he return to his own room to sleep that night, he even locked the door. Waking up in the middle of the night, Xu Ning's face was ashen, and with surprise, he found that the one to climb into his bed was Xu Cheng. "You woke up?" "No, yeah, I'm awake, Dad, why are you?" Xu Ning was so shocked that his jaw nearly fell off, but thankfully the sun had yet to rise, so his look of panic wouldn't be seen by him. "Dad, why didn't you tell me you came?" It was Heng Heng. "I've made Big Brother worry, but I'm not in a good mood today." Xu Ning did not tell him the truth, but it was not far from it. If things go south, Qin Yuzhuo may have to bear the blame even if she hasn't done anything yet. "Can you tell your dad why you hate your mother?" Xu Ning lay down and rested his head on Xu Cheng's shoulder, then circled his arms around his strong waist. "Dad, I don't hate Mom, it's just that we've been separated since I was young, so it was unavoidable. Actually, it's the same for Mom as well. For me, she's tried very hard to lessen the distance between us, I can see that. Dad, don't tell Mom what I said, I trust that she's done her best. My poor child, your dad is here for you in the future, I won't let you suffer, not even a little. Digging a pit for my mother, complete." It was only a little over 4 o'clock, the two hugged each other to sleep, and they slept very peacefully. In the morning, Xu Cheng had already left for work. Normally Xu Heng would rest by Xu Ning's side with his clothes off, but he didn't dare to do that today. The look in his eyes were obscured as they stared straight at the little one's face. Did he notice? Did he want to break this relationship they had? The sunlight shone on the little one's clean and snowy face, and the view of it was wonderful. Xu Ning wrinkled his brow and opened his big, beautiful eyes. At this moment, a tremble rippled through Xu Heng's heart, even his breathing shook. But Xu Heng just did not show his emotions on his face, he did not wish for it to show, and nobody could change this, but in front of the one before him, he had thrown that little attitude of his away. Xu Heng had been studying psychology, but right now he was still at his wit's end. At this point, Xu Ning saw Xu Heng. He was sitting quietly on the sofa, dressed fully in black with his collar open, his legs crossed, and his two hands rested on his knees. He had an appearance of nobility and mystery, with a countenance hard to ignore like that of an emperor's. It was also this person who stirred up his feelings, and like a fool, he was unable to free himself from these knots. The end of their holiday had come, and Xu Ning had made Xu Heng leave with regrets. It wasn't as if he did not want to ask, but he was always afraid that they would ruin their relationship by it. Xu Ning felt like a fool, he would rather hold on to this feeling, and waiting for him to marry before giving up, and he did not dare to face him either. His brother was just like that, treating him so absurdly well. Where would you find a big brother who was like that? Perhaps the chances may be low. Ah, how annoying, he's my brother so I can't fall in love with him, ah, how bothersome. Xu Ning shut his eyes tight, he had been down for the whole day but he felt even more depressed when he returned home. What's this? A car, of course. The bodyguards didn't even know how they should reply to him. This is the gift sent over by the Hongxing young master's men, in hopes that young master Xu will kindly accept this gift. Fuck, it's the latest Mercedes-Benz sports car with an open top. Isn't he just openly making fun of the fact that I'm not of age yet? But this is good stuff after all, but this sports car really was beautiful. Xu Ning was very pleased with it and his heart was slightly soothed. He called someone to remove the floor-to-ceiling window and bring the car into the living room as a decoration. It was limited edition after all. At 9 o'clock in the evening, the time of Xu Heng's unbreakable arrangement had arrived. The phone rang but Xu Ning did not receive it, he let the call drop on purpose and he did not even glance at it, he had already made up his mind. Perhaps Xu Heng's feelings were not deep, perhaps they were mixed up with their brotherly relationship, or perhaps either way he can't have such a dubious relationship with his big brother. The two had no future together at all, and it was even more impossible to break the Shu family's line of inheritance. Xu Ning sat painfully in the bathtub. If you had to endure the pain for a long amount of time, you might as well suffer for just a short amount of time. It was his own fault, and conniving Xu Heng was also his own fault. He had clearly been reborn with his memory intact, and since he can't avoid Qin Yushua and her troubles, he could still reach adulthood by playing the fool. But if he were to do things that way, Xu Ning wouldn't be able to get his revenge. He would rather he hadn't been reborn, and had just lost his life on his sick bed. In just a swoop, winter had arrived. A slurry of snow was gliding down like goose feathers outside. Even though holiday season had arrived, Xu Ning did not return home. He wanted to study, and this was the same with the other students in their third year of high school. The college entrance examinations were just months away. They would be done for if they don't hurry with their studies. Xu Gao was gloomy about it, but Xu Cheng understood the situation. Even Xu Heng had already returned home. Xu Heng was standing in his room, pondering over things as he watched the snow fall. He stayed for 3 days, then flew abroad. He really left. And with this, Xu Cheng couldn't stand it anymore. He went to the capital to bring the little one home. He was soon to be 170 centimeters tall, and he's still throwing a tantrum with his big brother. This one mess had lasted for such a long time that it was simply unbelievable. This was the first time Xu Cheng had pulled Xu Ning into the study seriously. With bright and piercing eyes, there was nowhere Xu Ning could escape. Tell me. Heng hangs in M country. He left because of you. Are you satisfied now? What on earth happened? Can you tell Dad? It's no use keeping quiet. We're only doing this because we care about how you feel. This was true for Xu Heng, it was true for your grandpa, and it's the same with me. Even Xu Yao had to run the other way when you're at home. He's still only a child. Xu Ning, I've never spoken to you in this way before, because you're a very sensitive child, but this can't go on anymore. As time passed, Xu Ning felt very upset. He had no way to speak of these matters, and thinking about it, Xu Heng also understood how I felt. As for Dad, based on the experiences of his previous life, he would not stand by his side. As expected, Xu Cheng told him to stand there and reflect on it. Harmony within the family was the most important, above all else. Just like that, Xu Ning was punished to stand. 2 hours had passed. Xu Gao gave Xu Cheng a call, but Xu Cheng was reluctant to give up. He had only allowed Xu Ning to return to his room when Xu Heng's call came. After reaching his room, Xu Ning stood by the window, staring at the moon, and a night passed just like that. Punish yourself for being stupid, for the fact that you were actually blind to your brother's anomalies. The next day, both Xu Gao and Xu Cheng's behaviors were slightly strange, but Xu Heng only cared about whether his grandpa was eating well. He did not even spare a glance to Xu Cheng. Xu Cheng felt sad in his heart. He was his own dear child after all. After their meal, he followed Xu Gao gloomily up the stairs, and was only willing to speak after sitting for a long while. I'll suspend Qin Yushua's matters for now. That's great. Even the air was fresher when she wasn't around. Xu Gao smiled while Sun Lin shook his head helplessly, coaxing Xu Yao. Xu Cheng picked up the crying little child. Let Daddy have a look. Is this necessary for a babysitter? Fire her, she hit me. Fire her. You naughty little thing, tell me, how many does this make? Xu Cheng thought about it. They've already changed about 20 of them. This was enough. Yao Yao, Daddy watched the recordings. You were the one who threw rocks and cut her head. You were scared that she'd complain, so you complained about her first, am I right? As long as you admit your mistakes, Daddy will buy you the latest toys. Okay, I was wrong, Daddy. Well, you. Xu Cheng did not have the heart to call him a motherless child. Who was to blame? If he were to blame Qin Yushua for having thoughts she shouldn't have, then the ones who ended up pitiful in the end were all the children. This was true for Xu Yao, and it was even worse for Xu Ning. He was very stubborn. He may seem like a good and sensible kid normally, but he was in fact a child with strong opinions, and it was hard to correct them even if he tried, but if he went with his flow, he would feel himself undignified as a father. During the New Year's, something happened at home. Xu Heng stood in front of the bed, and Xu Ning's eyes were red. Xu Gao was still fine before sleeping, but he did not wake up in the morning, he had left sleeping very peacefully. The same as he did in his past life. Xu Ning did not watch on with a cold heart, instead, he had brought him to the hospital for a check-up, took him for some exercise, and there was not even an inkling of any illnesses in his body, he died just like that. And at the same time, Sun Lin himself had taken some pills, and left a suicide note telling everyone he had gone off to take care of the old man. What a loyal servant, it was the same as what happened in his past life, the two oldies had a good relationship with decades of time spent together, they could be counted as brethren. The funeral went as could be expected, everybody did their best and the solemnity of the hall was incomparable, an endless stream of people came without stopping. Xu Ning's heart was silent, he was thinking about his grandpa's voice, and his smiles, he did not cry his heart out, but his eyes were very red. Xu Qing brought Qin Yushua back, they had to have a woman at home taking care of things. Dad was gone, as a daughter-in-law it was her part to cry, to show her filial piety. The funeral lasted 7 days and 7 nights, both Xu Ning and Xu Heng had stayed there for the entire duration of it, and Xu Qing even more so, he had even fainted twice. Qin Yushua had been very haggard, taking care of all the mourning relatives, busying in and out, it was still quite a tiring job. Xu Qing did not pay attention, he knew Qin Yushua's ability, if not he would not have taken her as his executive assistant for so many years. Having a woman around was great after all, at least they were sensitive, and you could have a warm embrace whenever you were exhausted. There was an ancestral hall within the ancestral home. To put it plainly, it was a simple but large house with their ancestors' plaques placed within, and a family tree that could reach the ground. This was still Xu Ning's first time coming there. There was a slight hint of sluggishness in his eyes, these days had been too bleak. Xu Heng did not dare to touch Xu Ning, it had been out of his expectations for his little brother to make such a choice, he had still rushed things and pushed it too much, destroying the harmonious relationship the two of them shared. After dreaming back to them in his sleep, Xu Heng landed a hefty slap on his own face, he regretted it. He looked so weary, and it hurts my heart so, I wish so much to comfort him. Xu Heng's gaze had been so full of heat, how could Xu Ning not have noticed it? He had only been guessing before, possibly, maybe, perhaps, he might that he likes me. But now that he thought about it, Xu Heng may have fallen for him since a long time ago. This was unscientific, but he really existed, the two of them were blood brothers, huh? Xu Ning's pupils shrunk and leaned his head forward like a turtle. What is going on? That's not right, something's not right here. Why wasn't Xu Heng's name in the family tree? Xu Ning blinked his eyes and rubbed them, then carefully eyed it up and down again. There was no need for that actually, because he was too surprised, he kept feeling as if he had cried so much that he may have gone blind and read it wrongly. But actually, it was clear as long as he looked under Xu Cheng's name. Under Xu Cheng's name were only 2 people, one was Xu Ning, and the other Xu Yao. Oh God, what is going on? This is impossible. Why wasn't Xu Heng's name there? Why? Xu Cheng loved him so much, he wouldn't have removed his name for any reasons, then what on earth could it be, he's not my brother. Xu Ning was flabbergasted and thrown into a state of fret and horror, he turned his head back abruptly, Xu Heng was right behind him, why did he not come forth? Was he not the eldest grandson? You. What is your relationship with Dad? Xu Ning's lips quivered and his entire body was shaking hard, he could not steady himself and his body was going soft, he was only able to support himself with his willpower alone, forcing himself to hold on. Who on earth are you? Xu Heng narrowed his eyes for a moment, did the little one notice the truth his stepfather did not allow him to reveal? Xu Heng's gaze turned to show pain and pity. It's a complicated situation, I'll tell you in the future, let's settle Grandpa's matters first. That's an excuse. Shu Ning could wait no longer, he shook his head and spoke irritably. Who on earth are you? Why is your name not on the family tree? I'm the real eldest son. Shu Heng was very worried, he had to hold on to Shu Ning's arms with his hands. Shu Ning pushed Shu Heng away emotionally and ran out. Some of the relatives in the distance saw it and was quite surprised, they were curious but they were not qualified to enter the ancestral hall to look. Shu Ning ran into the pine forest his grandfather cared meticulously for and cried. Shu Heng had already caught up and took him into his arms. Ning Ning. Listen to me, Ning Ning, it's not what you think it is, listen to me, I can explain. You liar. Shu Ning turned and threw a slap over, landing square on Shu Heng's cheek. Shu Heng did not care about his own body at all. If I told you before you were of age, it would only become a burden to you. I don't want to hear it, you've been lying to me this whole time, I'm such a fool. Ning Ning, stepfather treats me very well, he really does, I can't be selfish, do you understand how I feel? You're still young and can't make your own decisions yet, if I forced you to do anything, wouldn't I be worse than a beast? You're lying to me and you're still making up excuses for it. I like you, you've noticed that, haven't you? There was no way I could have come clean with you, I don't know whether you'll like me back or not, and I can't betray the Shu family after all they've done for me, I can only throw it all away if you loved me, but if you didn't I would protect you forever, and protect the Shu family, I'll protect everything you love. Go away, I don't want to hear it. Shu Ning was too emotional and his brain was in a mess, all he wanted to do was escape. With another swing of his hands, another slap landed on Shu Heng's face. Ning Ning, calm down, I've only kept it from you because I care about you too much, that's why I've been dreading it, I'm afraid that just like right now, you would ignore me, refuse to see me, and even ignore my calls, I'm in pieces Ning Ning, please, I beg you, don't be like that, calm down and listen to me, it really wasn't my intention to keep it from you, just that stepfather has been treating me as his own son, and he's given me the order to keep quiet on this, only a few people know. About my background, Grandpa didn't tell you either, right? Everybody was just thinking about Dad's feelings, I'm sorry, Ning Ning, I told you that I would wait for you to grow up before I tell you a secret, I really had my reasons, Ning Ning, my Ning Ning, don't cry anymore, my heart's going to break into pieces. Shu Heng had never spoken so many words before, and he even repeated his apologies over and over, after enduring 4 slaps even the right side of his face was swollen, and he spoke so much that even his lips started to hurt. Shu Ning couldn't escape for this, he could only face it head-on and buried himself in his tears. Shu Heng would wipe away his tears gently every time a droplet fell, he was afraid that the cold would hurt the little one's face. Shu Heng's coat was wrapped over Shu Ning's body while Shu Heng was only wearing his sweater, kneeling on the ice on one knee, holding Shu Ning, worrying that the little one would be cold. Shu Ning slowly stopped struggling, he wasn't angry anymore, shrinking quietly into Shu Heng's arms, his gaze hazy and eyes ruddy, then finally he burst into tears. Shu Qing heard that something has happened, and he rushed over quickly, and only after seeing Shu Heng holding Shu Ning, comforting him, was he finally at ease. It's best to just cry it out, Shu Ning had been quiet these days and didn't move, he didn't even eat anything, this had worried Shu Qing very much. Cry, my child, cry while you are still young enough for it, as the head of the family, I don't even have the right to cry. Thankfully Shu Qing had only seen Shu Heng's back, if he had seen the marks on his eldest son's face, it may have hurt him so much he could die. Shu Ning fainted, the shock was too much, if it was anyone else who had to deal with this, who could hold on. They were clearly mutually in love and yet they weren't allowed to love each other, separated by their blood relations. The heart-wrenching pain was unbearable, he had to numb himself and give up on this love, every time he dreamt of it at night, he would be overcome with sadness, and in the end when he wanted to steal his heart but couldn't go through with it, a silver lining emerged from the cloud, he wasn't actually his blood brother. Stepfather. Brother cheating Shu Heng. Son cheating Shu Qing. Qin Yuzhua who cheated her own son to death. And the unregainable Shu Gao who died just like that. He's really had it with this family. As soon as Xu Ning slept he dozed off for 2 days connected up to an 4 drip. Thankfully he participated in the funeral, if not, Xu Ning may have regretted it for the rest of his life. Xu Ning had a dream, and in his dream, Xu Gao was standing with his hand behind his back, his demeanor deep and mysterious. Xu Ning walked forth step by step, and with his tears flowing, he threw himself into the old man's embrace. Xu Gao lowered his head to look at him, and this shocked Xu Ning so much his pupils shrunk. Too young, way too young, a boy of similar age stood behind him. From his looks he could tell this was Sun Lin. Xu Gao pushed Xu Ning away gently and smiled as he took Sun Lin's hand, walking into the fog. "Grandpa, come back, Grandpa, Grandpa!" The little hand waved about in the air frantically, and in the end he woke in fright as his hands caught onto a bigger hand. His body was drenched in sweat. It was Xu Heng. He hurriedly threw his hands off. Xu Ning's complexion was very bad as he supported his head with one hand, and with the other, he raised his hand to point towards the door. But would Xu Heng leave? The answer was obvious. He had the character of a wolf and eyes sharp like an eagle. The look of the little one started to become complicated again. If he retreats now, then he may not have any other chance. "You've been unconscious for 2 days, everyone is worried, Dad is busy with things after the funeral so I want to look after you. Get out, I want some peace." "I won't bother you." Xu Heng took up his phone and sent a text message, while Xu Ning grabbed a pillow and threw it at him. Xu Heng picked it up and put it on the bed, then Xu Ning threw it again, and it hit Xu Heng's body. Xu Heng picked it back up like his punching bag. He was even more obedient than a pet dog, picking it up no matter how many times he threw it, as long as you were happy. There was nothing by Xu Ning's side anymore, and when he picked up the teacup he hesitated for a moment, but still threw it. It landed on Xu Heng's back and a ping could even be heard. Xu Heng picked it up and placed it on the small table. Xu Gao did not allow Xu Ning to drink tea or coffee. He wasn't even allowed to have too much juice. It was obvious why this pot of tea was placed here. It was so that Xu Heng could freshen up. "Have I been unconscious for 2 days?" The bruise under his big brother's eyes were very obvious. Had he not slept this whole time? Although Xu Ning was angry, his mind was still clear. He didn't want to feel moved, and he wasn't willing to either. But Xu Ning loved him. Xu Heng's love for him had developed even earlier. This made Xu Ning's heart tremble slightly. A very complicated look took his gaze, and he started to cry out again. Xu Heng wanted to come over but Xu Ning yelled out immediately. "Get out! I don't want to see you right now, please." Xu Heng stopped in his tracks, and clenched his fists. He was left with nothing better than the next choice. "All right, I'll watch over you from outside. The doctor will be here in a while and I'll come in with him then." Xu Ning's head hurt very much. The doctor had always been living in the ancestral home so he came very quickly. Then both he and Xu Heng waited for half an hour together outside, waiting for Xu Ning to calm down before they entered. The check went by very smoothly. He had no serious problems and his body was healthy. The few days when the old man passed, young Master Xu had been so sad that he had received a huge shock, and it was not strange for him to be tired after watching over the funeral all day and night. He had only fainted because of that combined with the overexertion of his body. The kitchen was ordered to prepare some porridge and some side dishes for Xu Ning to eat. Xu Ning refused to drink the water passed to him by Xu Heng, so he had to bother the doctor for the use of his hand instead. The porridge arrived. Xu Heng took a look at the doctor and the doctor was borrowed again. Xu Ning showed the doctor much respect but his hands just did not have too much strength. He had just woken up and hadn't eaten yet. Xu Heng sighed and allowed the doctor to withdraw and rest for now. All sorts of problems came up in HS Dad's body too, so the doctor can't be away for long. After sending him out personally, Xu Heng spoke a few words with the doctor before returning into the room. Xu Ning knew that he would not leave no matter what he told him. it was too hard for him to request for some personal space, so he decided to just lay down and avoid looking at him. But the things he thought of when he closed his eyes, were still related to him. He himself went crazy that day, and he also tried to explain himself tirelessly. Many words were repeated. This meant that it was chaotic in his heart too, unlike the usual composure he had. Just like that, Xu Ning, who was filled with worries, fell asleep again, but when night came he couldn't fall asleep at all. Xu Heng brought out a violin and performed for him, hoping that Xu Ning could feel a little better. He didn't watch TV or played with his phone. Xu Ning had only been staring at the ceiling, listening to song after song. It wasn't until Xu Heng took a sip of water did he ask the question that he doubted in his heart with a hoarse voice. When did it start? Xu Heng's gaze was wanton, staring straight towards Xu Ning. I don't know, by the time I thought it through, it's been at least 2 years. That's not a short amount of time. Xu Ning blinked his eyes. What on earth is going on? It was quite a mouthful to explain, but Xu Heng told him every detail, about the grievances of the adults that happened in the past. There was not much meaning in this, all that mattered was that he was to explain his birth, as well as the kindness shown to him by his stepfather. Xu Ning heard every word carefully. No wonder he didn't know in his past life. It turns out that it was because of Xu Cheng. He didn't allow anyone to mention Xu Heng's matters. Even Xu Gao didn't mention it. Xu Gao treats Xu Ning very well, but he had never mentioned it privately. He did not even hint at it. In his past life, Qin Yuhua had been so pampered, and Xu Cheng loved her so much, but even then Xu Heng's birth was not explained to her. In the end, Xu Heng inherited the Xu clan as an outsider. Under normal circumstances, the Xu clan was a family business. It wasn't fought over by Xu Gao and Xu Cheng. Since the main house couldn't hold on any longer, the second house should have been the ones continuing the line. For example, Xu Zixian, he was a phoenix amongst men, so just the same, he could bring glory to the clan, and continue its splendor. Xu Heng was ranked first in Sea City, whereas Xu Zixian stood second. He had truly earned that second place. Where's your real father? He's in the capital. I'm not close to him. My relationship with him is similar to you and Qin Yuhua. He didn't raise me and we aren't close. However, stepfather has been getting me to reunite with him often after I became of age. He told me that everyone had their difficulties back then, and hoped that I could let it go. The feelings of the adults are very complicated, and they always hoped that everyone could understand and empathize with them. Ning, brother won't force you, but don't shy away from me, okay? What? Xu Heng had a start, and stood stupidly by the bed like the most perfect statue created under God's hands. I'm hungry. Porridge. The porridge has gone cold, I'll go warm it up. Xu Heng picked up the tray and hurried out. The little one was finally willing to talk with him. Both hope and fear mingled in his heart, jumping up and down. There was newly cooked porridge in the kitchen. Qin Yuhua had also gotten hungry. When Xu Cheng came over personally to get some, he bumped into Xu Heng, and when the two spoke, Xu Heng explained to him that Xu Ning knew about everything now. Xu Cheng was silent, and his brows were wrung into a frown. Xu Heng knew what his stepfather was thinking, and he leaned over intimately, pulling Xu Cheng's hand like what he had learned from Xu Ning. We can just act as we normally do. He won't tell anyone. I know, Ning is tight-lipped, but your matters can't be exposed any more than this. If not, bad things may happen. You are my eldest son and you will inherit the Xu clan in the future. On this topic, both father and son had a fierce discussion for several minutes. Ning was hungry, and Xu Heng could not change Xu Cheng's mind with just a few words, so he just left with the porridge. Xu Ning was lying in bed waiting eagerly. His big brother had only left for a little while and he had already started to miss him. Chapter 92. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xu Cheng walked up to the third floor with porridge and some side dishes on hand. Before this, Qin Yuhua would never eat salted vegetables, but now she has changed a lot. She had become gentle and calm, and she was still so understanding, diligent, and demure. Xu Ning learned of Xu Heng's birth out of accident, and the two of them had a dispute in the snow, and it was actually because of this, but thankfully Xu Heng had always been responsible, taking care of Xu Ning all this while so meticulously. He was not his big brother and yet he was better than one. If not, the second child may be neglected since Xu Cheng had been constantly heartbroken over the death of his father these days. Xu Cheng, who was deep in thought, suddenly remembered many things that Xu Gao had told him. If Qin Yuzhuo was to find out, if the second house was to find out, how would Xu Heng live on in this family? Would Xu Ning still be able to live his quiet days? Would Xu Yao not have the desire to monopolize things in the future? Qin Yuzhuo had wanted to make things hard for Xu Heng before she even found out, so if she were to know about it, a big mess will definitely happen. She definitely wouldn't take this sitting down. It was proper for Xu Cheng to be worried. He had to consider the proposals of his father before his passing. And for the sake of family harmony, the rules of the ancestral hall had to be changed. Only the eldest son will be allowed to enter in case Xu Yao would also find out the family tree's secret after he's grown up. But there was another headache cropping up. Xu Heng didn't want to continue the family business. At that time, Xu Heng said, "When Ning Ning grows up he can be the chairman, and it'll be the same if I assist him as the vice chairman." "He won't be able to do it. Dad, he's your real son. I know you treat me well, but there were no heirs left at the capital side. I'm afraid they may not just give up, and I can deal with fighting on both lines, but Ning Ning is after all of the Shu clan's bloodline, he should be the one to inherit the business." Thinking about their conversation made Xu Qing speechless. He sighed. What Xu Heng said was right, but Xu Ning didn't seem to want to. Well, what can he do? Might as well just see how things go. Qin Yuzhuo was waiting in the room. Unlike how she was before, she had become slightly more cautious, looking up to Xu Qing with a loving gaze. Xu Qing walked over, and put down the porridge. "I saw Heng Heng earlier. Ning Ning was hungry as well." Ning Ning. Cutting off after only speaking halfway, Qin Yuzhua's special skill, looking pitiful with her eyes tearful. "Isn't there still Xu Yao?" "Xu Yao, that's right, my little Yao Yao." Qin Yuzhua patted Xu Yao's back with loving pity. The little guy was sleeping very soundly in her arms. He had been all sticky with her since he had learned that Qin Yuzhuo was his mother. He wouldn't leave her for even a second, even when they needed to use the toilet. And with that, the three-man sleeping position was born. Qin Yuzhuo was very familiar with turning the sails according to the direction of the wind. She held on to Xu Yao and didn't let go. Thinking back to it, Xu Cheng's feelings for me were so deep he probably wouldn't send me away, but as for Xu Ning, I haven't seen him in private since I came back, and when we were in public, even our eyes didn't meet. What on earth is going on? Qin Yuzhuo didn't understand. I'm his mother. At this crucial moment, she can't do anything that could arouse suspicion. Qin Yuzhuo would never leave the house as long as Xu Cheng never said anything. On the other side, Xu Heng had just returned to the room when Xu Ning turned around immediately to look elsewhere just like before, super cute. But Xu Heng did not dare to tease him anymore. The porridge had already cooled down when he brought it over, so it was just right to eat now. Xu Heng put the little table on the bed, then put down the porridge and the dishes before sitting on the sofa, reading a magazine. His brother had always been the one to feed him in the past. Xu Ning stared at the delicious-smelling porridge, and pursed his lips, making no movements. Benefits were benefits, he can't lose them just because he was angry. Didn't you like me? Come on, feed me. Xu Ning's cheeks were puffed up and even rolled his eyes. Xu Heng's heart was beating like a drum. He put down the magazine tentatively and the little one stiffened up a bit. He was probably observing me from the corner of his eye. Xu Heng had decided and trod over elegantly. Sitting down by the side of the bed, he picked up the little spoon and gave it a try before bringing it to his little brother's mouth. Xu Ning opened his little mouth and ate it, seeming quite pleased. He even licked the corner of his mouth. Xu Heng was overjoyed, but he didn't show it on his face. He attended to him with much care, but sadly he had finished it. Xu Ning turned to lie down immediately, not even sparing a glance to Xu Heng. He had only eased up after looking from a close distance. His brother's face was fine now. He didn't hold back when he was angry, and landed a pretty heavy blow on him, and thinking back to it seemed as if the sound of it still rung in his ears. How could I? Although I hit him quite heavily when I was mad with anger, but he still didn't blame me for it. It had clearly been something they could have solved just by speaking about it in private. There was no need to explain after a sad misunderstanding. Ah! Xu Ning knew that it was hard for Xu Heng. What would he have done if he were in his place instead? Perhaps he would retreat because of the condemnation of his conscience. After all, there were so many people he could have fallen in love with. Why must he have chosen his stepfather's son, and even a boy at that? Xu Heng had been bearing with all this pressure, taking care of me each day, watching over me, treasuring me, and he had even gotten revenge of those who had wanted to hurt me. The way he jokingly called me his wife, and the way he told me that I was the only one in his heart, and even said that he liked me. Angle, Xu Ning hurriedly retreated into his blanket. I've been so stupid, what a fool. There had clearly been so many traces he could follow, but he had missed out on so much. Hold on, did he mention about me turning of age? Oh my God, then wouldn't I have had to bear with it together with him? I want to do it. Xu Heng was worried, watching him with his profound gaze. He wanted to extend his hand over but he couldn't. Under this dilemma, Xu Ning suddenly sat up and his eyes darted side to side, as if there was something he wanted to say. What's wrong? Nothing. And he shrunk back into the quilt, gnashing his teeth, and didn't even end up saying anything. Nobody would have believed that. Xu Heng sighed at his little brother's anger, then he took up his violin and continued to play it, and the way he played it made his little brother's heart ache. It was fine to just play it natural. That's right, Xu Heng did not sleep on purpose. He was playing the pitiful part on purpose and making himself look flustered, and he had done all this to ease up their relationship. Xu Ning was hard-hearted to others, but to him, he had always been easy to compromise. And with that, things slowly start to look up again. Xu Ning sat up abruptly again. I can get my card at 16 right. What card? Hundreds of documents passed through Xu Heng's mind in that next moment. My ID card. Xu Heng nodded. That's right, it was 18 when I got mine, but the national policy has changed. But you still can't get a driving license yet. That will have to wait till you're a full 18 years. Who the hell cares about that? In front of this piece of cake, Xu Heng, everything else had to make way. Xu Ning leaned over to Xu Heng with a slight gloominess in his countenance, and his little hands gripped the sheets. He looked very gloomy. Did it have to be 18? Xu Heng's head was filled with question marks. To drive a car. The topic had leaned to a different direction. But it was fine as long as his little brother was willing to speak. Xu Heng nodded. And so Xu Ning misunderstood. I'm already 170 centimeters tall soon, and I can get my ID card in 3 months, but that bastard Xu Heng wanted to be a gentleman. But who knew of the inner sufferings of a little bottom? He had never even slept with anyone at the age of 30 in his past life. This won't do. 16 was already quite old. It will work. Xu Ning made up his mind, 16 at the latest. Xu Heng is mine, don't take him from me. Thinking of it made him sad and frustrated. Xu Ning raised his hands and slapped Xu Heng a few times, then snorted before lying back down. Xu Heng was mystified. He didn't know what his little brother was throwing a tantrum over. He hesitated for a moment before helping him fix his blanket, then patted his back gently. He had been sleeping for way too long. Xu Ning couldn't sleep at all. He would ask Xu Heng to fetch his phone at one moment, then order him to cut fruits for him the next. Xu Ning loved the way Xu Heng handled his knife the most. It was very suave and very alluring, slashing his knife down seriously in a series of swooshes. It was particularly pleasing to look at. After finishing the fruits, Xu Ning wanted to use the bathroom. He had just gotten down from the bed when his legs had gone soft and his body propelled forwards. With a quick reaction, Xu Heng received him, bringing him into his arms like usual. For a moment, the atmosphere between the two had gone very strange. Shu Heng was testing the waters, so he was only holding him and didn't carry him up sideways. He wanted to see what reaction Shu Ning would have. Shu Ning looked at him with his head cocked to the side, then hooked his arms around his brother's neck, his intentions obvious. Shu Heng carried the little one up immediately and walked towards the bathroom. Cripple mode begins. He had only struggled for an hour, and Shu Ning's anger did not subside, but he had forgotten it completely. It's not easy being alive, so why bother torturing each other? Especially towards the one you love. He padded to the space beside him, but Shu Ning did not look at Shu Heng. The bed sunk down a little. Shu Heng had gotten in, and laid down by Shu Heng's side without taking his clothes off. Normally the two would be facing each other in a mutual embrace, but Shu Heng didn't dare to venture in today, and slept in a very well-behaved manner. This was way out of Shu Ning's expectations, but when he had determined that Shu Heng had fallen asleep, Shu Ning propped his head up with one hand, and kept on staring at his features, that was handsome to a godly degree, feeling slightly out of it. Was this real? He loves me. Was that real? If I wake up from this dream, would he still be there? Early the next morning, Shu Heng was still in the room when Shu Ning woke up, and he immediately brought a warm towel over to help Shu Ning wipe down his face and neck. Are you hungry? Shu Heng felt vexed, and he sat up. I'm fine now. You're still a little weak, so you should lie down for another half day. I'll stay with you. Oh, how intoxicating. Hearing that his brother would stay with him, he immediately dropped down as if he were boneless. The corner of Shu Heng's mouth curled up. If my little brother likes it when I smile, then I'll smile more. As he expected, the results were not bad. Shu Ning had also raised the corners of his mouth. The two had their breakfast together. Shu Ning was having his porridge, and Shu Heng his rice, just like when they've just met. After they finished their meal, Shu Heng picked up Shu Cheng's call. Qin Yuhua yelled out Shu Ning's name during her dream yesterday night, so she wanted to come see him together. Shu Ning hadn't been well and Qin Yuhua was quite worried. Shu Heng rejected him outright. Ning needed to recuperate in peace, so this will have to wait. As for how long in the future they had to wait, this would depend on Shu Ning's mood. Shu Heng was too cool. He didn't think that he would reject him immediately. With starry eyes, Shu Ning opened his mouth to eat his porridge and he bit on the spoon. Dad, it's all your fault. Ning chipped his tooth. Shu Ning. Shu Cheng. Qin Yuhua was right next to Shu Cheng, and she was slightly anxious. Then have a dentist look at it. Shu Cheng immediately made the suggestion, and Shu Heng rejected him once again. Whether he would find a dentist or not was up to him to do. And then that he hung up. Hearing the beeping noise, Shu Cheng's face was like this, oh, and Qin Yuhua's face was like this, you uneducated little shits, just you wait. Shu Gao had already died. As long as I can stay here successfully, there's a lot I can do in this household. Before waiting long for Qin Yuhua to feel good about herself, Shu Cheng took her hands and looked at her seriously. Before Dad died, he left a message. Don't lie to me, Shu Cheng. Shu Gao left sleeping. He didn't leave any last words at all, and he had already separated all the inheritance when he was still alive. There was no further legacy. But Qin Yuhua was still sitting straight, waiting for him to speak with a good attitude. Tell me, I'm listening. Dad told us to get divorced. To protect the interests of the children. What? Qin Yuhua was stunned as if she was struck by lightning, but her expression did not change. She had been living like a corpse all this while in the island, so this was nothing. It had only been several minutes when Qin Yuhua's gaze had turned exceptionally sad. Why? Can you tell me the reason? We won't make the divorce public. This is what Dad wants, and I don't want to talk too much about what you yourself have done, and I can see that you've changed, just that we have to respect Dad's last words, so don't worry, I won't treat you badly. Qin Yuhua, who had given up on love, had a very clear look in her eyes. All right, I agree. Yuzhua, I love you too." After 3 entire days, Qin Yuzhua had finally found the Shu Ning she ordered. Chapter 93. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The sun shone brightly that day. Shu Ning dreamt of his grandpa again during his afternoon nap. The sordid feeling had multiplied within him. Strolling through the garden, Shu Gao's shadow was looming across all the grass and the trees. His grandpa liked pine trees and stayed around the gardens all day, with many poems and art pieces of pine trees displayed within his room. Shu Ning recalled all these thoughts, looking towards the snow hanging above the tree branches. The green blended with the white was an exceptional sight to look at. Shu Ning. With the sounding of Qin Yuzhua's voice, Shu Ning's footsteps halted and his eyes shrunk. This voice seems to be quite angry. Shu Ning turned back to look. Qin Yuzhua was walking briskly over with her pursed lips, and her hands clenched into fists. "She wants to hit me." Be Nov calm. Shu Ning's mouth curled into a smile and his gaze was wanton. "Go back quickly, Dad won't let us meet." "What?" A tummy full of words Qin Yuzhua had wanted to say was stuck at her throat, and all her anger was stuffed in her chest. After much surprise, that was the only thing she could ask. Shu Ning understood her too much, so he was slightly upset, and gave her a bad look. "It will be bad if someone sees you here, there is surveillance everywhere." "Alright, take care, Mom misses you a lot." "Cut the nonsense, go." Qin Yuzhua had to look for him for 3 whole days before she could get this chance. She wanted to talk about all those years of sadness and pain, the grievances that she could never finish talking about even if she spoke through several days and nights. She even hated the fact that Shu Ning did not plead in her stead. She wanted to give him a few slaps and asked him if he knew what filial piety was. And in the end, for Shu Ning to say such things after seeing her made Qin Yuzhua petrified. Her complexion was very unnatural and the current situation did not seem very bright. She could not afford to offend her son. She wanted to say a few words before leaving immediately. It was only a few words, it wouldn't take more than a few seconds, but who knew that Shu Ning was so resolute, reprimanding her in a loud voice. After approaching truculently, Qin Yuzhua shrunk back once more. Shu Ning continued his jog. It was a cold day, so he was dressed pretty heavily. It wasn't until he heard his phone ring did a sincere smile finally appear on his face. "I heard the maid say that you were in the grove. You should come home quickly, or you're going to catch a cold." "If I do catch one, will Big Brother have the time to take care of me?" He was already 16 years of age and he was still acting spoiled. Shu Ning's tone had been playful but his eyes were desolate. Shu Heng should be leaving for M country soon. Shu Ning cherished very much the last days they had together. Shu Heng had just confessed but Shu Ning had not responded to him yet, so the atmosphere between the two felt a tinge strange. "You know, Ning Ning." "That's right, I do know, you would definitely take care of me." Shu Ning looked up at the sky silently. "Shu Heng, oh, my Shu Heng, even if you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, shouldn't you adjust your IQ when you're talking about love? You'll make it hard for me to continue on the conversation this way." Shu Heng's tone was very gentle. "Be good, if you don't make a fuss I'll bring home a cake for you tonight. Dad has caught a rather serious cold so I will be helping him out at the office, but actually, I wanted to look after you at every moment, but you wouldn't come to the office." Interrupting Shu Heng's long speech, when did aloof male gods get so talkative? "Alright, it's my fault again, see you when I get back." He hung up the call abruptly, but after hanging up, he regretted it. Shu Ning felt himself too contentious. He should just forgive him if he can. There was no need for the two of them to torment each other, and sleeping in separate rooms during winter or whatnot. It was cold and lonely, feels a bit like a wife and her husband's quarrels. Whatever, the deed has been done, he would just accept it if he climbed into his bed again tonight. The phone rang and Shu Ning felt giddy immediately. After picking up the call, Shu Heng chose his words carefully, and coaxed Shu Ning so well his heart was blooming with flowers. Shu Heng and Shu Cheng returned together at night. Qin Yuzhuo was in the living room and she immediately stood up to receive them with a smile. Shu Heng released Shu Cheng's arm and went upstairs. They'd been eating separately this entire time. Shu Heng was with Shu Ning and Shu Cheng with Qin Yuzhuo. Qin Yuzhuo was anxious about how things would turn out, but she had decided to give up on this relationship. All she wanted was her bread. When it came to this, her heart was still assaulted with the hot sting of anxiety. Because this was the date they agreed on, the day they divorced. The two went upstairs to eat, drank wine, and turned on some music for a dance. When she was pulled into Shu Cheng's arms, and watched with his gentle gaze, Qin Yuzhuo had nearly fallen to him. If piercing love did not exist, then the same would not exist of hate. Good times always lasted only short whiles. During their sleep, Shu Cheng had still taken out the document paper bag. He did not say a single word, but truthfully, he did not need to. Qin Yuzhuo ignored the bag on the table, painting her skin with beauty products. She smelled fragrant, and her appearance was beautiful and decorous. She still helped her husband into bed as she would before. Qin Yuzhuo waited for Shu Cheng to fall deeply asleep before she took the paper bag and left for the room on the first floor. It had been unoccupied for a long time, so the room looked quite gloomy. When she opened the windows, a gust of bone-chilling wind blew in, causing her to shudder. She really wanted to hug herself at this moment. Qin Yuzhuo sat on the sofa for a long time before she opened the bag calmly, and looked through the documents carefully before signing her name. Shu Cheng was no ordinary man. If they were to go through the divorce procedures as they were done, it wouldn't even take an hour before the media throughout the city would find out. Shu Gao means to give her the cold treatment, and keep the grandchildren in the dark about this. Shu Cheng couldn't bear to see Qin Yuzhuo's reputation ruined either, so they could only do this by special means. The corner of Qin Yuzhuo's eyes were wet. She had been crying for a good few years, but she actually still had more tears to cry. Ah! No matter, my husband still loves me. Shu Ning was cold on the surface, but warm beneath. If not, why would he have said such harsh words to her if he did not care? Shu Yao was too young, so she could only count on Shu Ning, not to mention that Shu Heng's show of brotherly affection was so deep. Thinking back to it, if Shu Ning wanted to harm him, he would have definitely had quite a few chances to do so. Qin Yuzhuo felt terrible. She was in so much pain that she had curled up into a ball. The white nightgown fluttered in the wind, making her figure look even more pitiful and helpless. In the master bedroom on the second floor, Shu Ning heard the car when Shu Heng returned, and an idea struck his mind. He would play hide and seek with him. Although it was very dark in the wardrobe, Shu Ning had his phone. He wouldn't know if he didn't look inside, but seeing it now was quite a shock, really. Who would have thought that there was a secret compartment within the wardrobe, and there were some unspeakable items inside? But that was not a proper way to describe it. These were all things Shu Ning had worn. Giving it a tug, several pants with tails attached came out, and Shu Ning's mouth twitched with much embarrassment. This couldn't possibly be Big Brother's collection, right? Shu Ning had been too focused on what was in front of him and had forgotten to regard the outside, so when Shu Heng opened the big wardrobe, both their faces were flushed red. Especially Shu Ning. On his left hand was a pair of cat ears as if he had wanted to give them a try, and on his right were a bunch of erotic underwear. His gaze was clear and the words "I am innocent" were written across his big eyes. This gave Shu Heng a tingle in his heart, and sat into the wardrobe directly. But how big could a wardrobe be? Shu Heng was only sitting by the edge and the two were leaning very closely to each other, bringing about an ambiguous feeling. Shu Ning swallowed his saliva. "You're back." Shu Heng's gaze darkened. "It was you, and not Big Brother. Something seems to have changed." Shu Heng did not think too deeply into it. He took his little brother's left hand and put the cat ears on his head. "How cute, it fits you well. Brother, nobody would hide their company's products in their wardrobes, would they?" "I would. Are there any latest models you wanted to wear?" Shu Ning rolled his eyes and moved his legs, showing his unease. "Move away, it's hot." "Where is it hot?" "I'll blow on it for you." Shu Heng suddenly approached, and his lung capacity was quite large. There was no place for Shu Ning to hide, being teased by his big brother like this was very embarrassing, but he did not get angry. Brother, you're becoming more and more annoying. You'll be the only one I'm like this to, alright. Brother. Xu Heng had his fill and stopped. His little brother was still young. If he were mature at this time he would have done him right now. How great would that be, with a pile of clothes hung above them and his precious shrinking back inside, this cute little ball holding on to such erotic things. Xu Heng felt a heat rise up in his chest. He was about to get a reaction from this. He immediately turned around and left, taking his suit off as he went. He was getting ready for a bath. While Xu Ning, his heart was beating rapidly and he had already closed his eyes, his little mouth pouting bashfully. But. Where's the hot kiss I expected? Where's my dominating top husband? Xu Ning opened his eyes just in time to see the exceptionally glamorous undressing actions of his brother. It was too manly, too handsome, oh my fucking god, too bad. Xu Heng was a gentleman / after preparing the water, Xu Heng looked towards Xu Ning, standing by the door to the bathroom. The meaning was obvious. Xu Ning sighed in his heart, he had already bathed on his own. Xu Ning's face was covered in black lines. You blockhead, can't you ask? I refuse, can't you say just one sentence extra? He would fiddle all around with him in the past, where has his overbearing courage gone? Xu Ning cried without tears, looking up at the roof wordlessly. Told you to do it, regretting it now are you? Xu Ning rolled around on the bed, flipping around back and forth depressingly. Not only that, when Xu Heng came out, the service he was provided before was gone too, because he was wearing a bathrobe and not a towel as he would before, giving him a bird's eye view of his good body, his clavicle, chest, 2 little dots, pecs, his long legs, and the majestic silhouette of that area could also be seen when he was walking. Unhappy I want to take off his bathrobe. Xu Ning had really done so. He immediately jumped down to the ground when Xu Heng came to the bed, and pretended to fall. When Xu Heng held onto him with his quick reflexes, Xu Ning had already succeeded. The bathrobe's belt was pulled loose, and everything was exposed. Everything was actually exposed. He wasn't wearing any underwear, and this made Xu Ning so embarrassed that he turned away immediately. Big brother was so big there, why am I only looking there? Were your desires not satisfied / a glint flashed past Xu Heng's eyes and they became even darker. They were profound but did not have any leaks. He carried him and put him on the bed, then fixed his belt. Hungry? I'll get you something to eat. Don't go. Xu Ning shouted out in a hurry. He wanted to say, put on some underwear before you go. You're my man. What if you flashed someone? He was going mad. But when Xu Heng turned his head back with eyes full of expectation, Xu Ning couldn't say it anymore. His little brother was still angry inside. Xu Heng walked forward with his head drooping down, but Xu Ning coughed twice. Big brother should be exhausted after a day's work, so just stay here, we can get someone to send it over, and I'm not very hungry either so there's no rush. Xu Heng looked over immediately, and this made Xu Ning bashful once more. Xu Heng strode over in big steps to the side of the bed but he did not sit down, he was very cautious. Can I hold you? Only that, don't misunderstand. It's been a long time since they've stuck to each other. Xu Ning bit his lower lip, not speaking. Xu Heng was waiting, but Xu Ning shot him a gloomy glare before Xu Heng sat down and pulled him into his arms gently. If this were before, Xu Heng would have put Xu Ning directly on his lap with his bare but pressing down on his rod. It felt very good. Xu Ning hesitated for a moment before getting up to sit on his brother's thighs, then curled his arms around his neck, and rubbed on him. Xu Heng's entire body was petrified and his eyes were widened into circles. Xu Ning snorted. I've already forgiven you, do you not dare to touch me anymore if I don't tell you to? Ning Ning. It's not like I dislike Big Brother, I do like Big Brother, give me some time. This was the last restraint of a bottom. If his big brother dared to pounce on him, he would dare to give in, but Xu Heng cared too much about Xu Ning. This made him very touched. but at the same time it tormented him as well. He really wanted to kiss his big brother on the lips. He missed his soft tongue that dominated him, and his hot body. Chapter 94. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xu Heng was shocked, but it did not show on his face. What did Xu Ning mean? He likes his big brother. That type of like. The same as mine. The last thing Xu Ning said was, "Give me some time," so since he can't ask, he can only ask with his actions. Especially when he said, "Do you not dare to touch me anymore if I don't tell you to?" Clearly that meant that he liked physical contact. Xu Heng first rubbed the top of the little one's head, then tightened his arm around him, and stroked his back with his other hand. Although being between clothes helped to ease their problems of lovesickness, it still didn't feel as good as if he were to touch inside in the end. Xu Heng narrowed his eyes. The little one was obedient like a little cat with no discomfort around him. He could take a step further now. Xu Heng slid his hands gently into his clothes, and ran his fingers through his skin gently. Xu Heng was a wise man and good at figuring people out, wasn't that so? Xu Ning twisted around and started to give his own comments. "Brother, harder, at the top, too." With that, the hand climbed upwards. It had only been a few minutes. Xu Heng's big hand was stroking along the smooth skin, and scratching, over and over, and even dared to slip towards the front to rub his belly. Xu Ning's entire body was very soft and he had entrusted all his weight to Xu Heng, moving his little butt every so often, but he did not dare to make it too obvious, seducing a top or whatnot. How embarrassing! Xu Heng was starting to reach for extras now. His hand moved upwards, slowly, intentionally crossing over the little beans when he passed his chest. Xu Ning trembled. The feeling was quite strong, but unfortunately his hand had only ventured past and did not linger for more. It was quite a shame. Xu Ning had actually wanted to call out, but he was afraid that Xu Heng would think him cheap. He was only 16, so he didn't dare to take the initiative. What could Xu Ning do? "Can we do this laying down instead? I want to be pressed down." With the raise of his finger, Xu Heng brought Xu Ning's chin up and his eyes met his brother's. The two were looking at each other with very ambiguous gazes, especially how Xu Heng's deep and profound eyes seemed to be immersed in the faint light of a flame. If not for the fact that Xu Ning was constantly staring at them, he would definitely have missed it. Is big brother getting an erection? Does he want it? Xu Ning had also decided to tighten his arms, and with the tip of his nose, he rubbed Xu Heng's throat. Big brother's throat was moving up and down. How cute. Xu Ning, who narrowed his eyes, went ahead and opened his mouth. "Move closer and I bite a round little teeth mark." Perfect. Xu Heng's entire body had gone stiff. Xu Ning could even see him swallowing his saliva. Was it effective? "Then I'll bite again," and so not only did he add another third of strength into it, he even ground his teeth on him naughtily. Xu Heng sucked in a breath. This alluring little devil, he's really pushing people over to the edge. Xu Heng had already tried his very best to endure, but it was all for naught. He had a reaction below, so he couldn't continue holding the little one anymore. If he gets angry now, all his efforts up till now would have been in vain. Xu Heng wanted to leave, but Xu Ning didn't let go of him. But who was Xu Heng? Nothing was impossible to do when it came to him. And so he moved his hands to his armpits and tickled him. Xu Ning laughed out loud and could only let go in desperation, and protected his armpit subconsciously. But if virtue was a foot tall, the devil would be 10. Not even in Xu Heng's dreams would he have expected that Xu Ning would. He curled his legs to the back, securing tightly to his waist. So how was he going to go now? There was simply no way he could. If he gets up forcefully, the little one would fall. And right now, Xu Heng was in a pretty tight spot. The large object was rubbing right against Xu Ning. Because of the position of the two, the lower regions of the two were stuck directly together, and even quite tightly at that. That thing in the center was bouncing up and down in excitement. Xu Heng's face reddened instantly and his eyes fell on Xu Ning's face. How would he react? Would he be angry or? Xu Ning's face was blushed as red as blood. Seeing that his brother has stopped trying to tickle him, he hurriedly curled his arms around his neck and even rubbed against his handsome face. Crash! Xu Heng nearly couldn't resist pushing Xu Ning down. The green veins on his forehead were popping. This won't do, not yet, he's still young. Xu Ning didn't care about all that. My big lollipop, where are you going? Thinking of Xu Heng's indecisiveness, Xu Ning was very helpless on it too, so simply giving him a hint should be good for now. Brother, 16 is already mature by today's standards. I'm an adult now, and the house grandpa gave me can also be transferred to my name now. When Xu Gao was still around, he had once given him a rather large seaside villa, and both Xu Ning and Xu Heng had gone over during the holidays to enjoy themselves once. The scenery was beautiful, poetic, and picturesque. Thinking to when they took walks on the beach at night, that free and relaxed feeling, just thinking about it made him want more of it. It was wonderful, especially the yes his big brother would look at him with, they satisfied him very much. That's it. He wouldn't be thinking that I was really talking about the house, would he? Bro, the key point was adult. Brother. Do you think that I have to reach 18 before I'm considered an adult? Xu Ning rolled his eyes. He moved his little butt and that thing grew bigger again, and it was very stiff. Xu Ning was only wearing his pajama pants on the bottom, and it was made of a very thin material, it couldn't obstruct the valiant heat of that thing. Xu Ning took a breath and his gaze was slightly hazy. Brother, your logic is too old-fashioned. The country already recognizes 16-year-olds to be adults. If not, why would they allow them to get their ID cards? If I start to miss you in the future, I can just settle all the procedures by myself so that I can visit you in M country. I heard that M country was very open, people there have already gone through quite a few partners at my age. Do you want to be in a relationship? Xu Heng closed his eyes, this was simply too awkward. Bearing with this was quite difficult, so being able to give a calm but hoarse answer was already his limit. Doesn't big brother like me? Why don't we try it first? Sigh, he really was still a child after all, there were different degrees to liking someone, it doesn't run as deep as love, or as fascinating, like to the point where a moth wouldn't retreat even if it were about to be burned by a fire. Xu Heng nodded, he was very willing. Let go, I have to go to the bathroom. Are you going to rub it? The red glow of Xu Heng's face reached down to his neck. Can I watch? Brother. Xu Ning dragged his words, he could feel that Xu Heng was struggling and his whole body was trembling. He tightened the grip of his arm subconsciously so that Xu Ning could stick to him without any gap in between. Xu Ning's gaze was wanton as he mustered up the courage to give his big brother a kiss right on the lips. Look, his sexy throat was bobbing again. Xu Ning was a little angry, what he said just now was all for nothing, his big brother didn't catch on to the main parts at all. 16 is the age of adulthood, bro. I understand that you respect my thoughts by not laying a hand on me before I was of age, it was very touching, and I'm not someone with no self-respect either. But an adult is an adult, I would never be able to wait till I'm 18, Xu Heng was such a wise person, he definitely knew that undue delay would lead to trouble. I'm not a kid anymore if I'm an adult. Actually, I don't even pay much attention to birthdays, how about we have ours together? We'll do it on the 17th, we'll have our birthday together on the 17th, okay? The 17th of March of every year will be my birthday. As a wedding anniversary, right? Xu Ning twisted in excitement, and the rod was bouncing impressively, wetting Xu Ning's pajama pants. The flow of heat made Xu Ning's heart rate speed up and his breath hurried, his body felt extremely hot. All right. Brother, I feel bad below. Xu Ning had also gotten a reaction. He had given up on all his restraints, and all the face and dignity of a bottom had already been pulled down by Xu Ning himself. It hurts down there, Xu Heng swallowed his saliva, and didn't even ask before his big hands gave Xu Ning's little sprout a touch through his pants, it wasn't small anymore and has already learned of desires. It wasn't as if Xu Heng didn't understand what he meant by being an adult, but he just wanted to confirm whether Xu Ning was really coming on to him or not. Xu Heng had to be cautious in answering if he were just tempting him. If he doesn't pass this level now, there may be no next time. If they do it, it would hurt a lot the first time, and the first few times wouldn't go too easily either. He couldn't bear to see him bleed, or injured. Xu Heng knew how sizable his girth was. If he were to be reckless, Xu Ning might even split apart. He had to make preparations. Only then could it be foolproof. Xu Heng was a man. He was a man with a very strong desire to monopolize. Men would care about seeing the blood from popping a cherry, but he didn't want to see that. Xu Heng's gaze was very dark as he pondered over this matter, and the squirming of his hands started to speed up slowly. He was being 10 times more careful than usual. Xu Ning was twisting his waist, unconsciously holding Xu Heng tight, shivering like a pitiful little animal, teasing people to love and pity him. Xu Heng landed kiss after kiss down on him and stopped thinking, because the sounds made by his little brother were too tempting and wonderful. He even refused to miss the sound of Xu Ning's breaths. The pink little mouth was slightly parted so that he could breathe, and the flames of desire within Xu Heng's eyes could no longer be concealed. He couldn't help lowering his head and possess Xu Ning's mouth ravenously, seizing it entirely with no corners left untouched. Xu Ning was so into it that he didn't even realize it when his pants were pulled down. The two things were stuck together and Xu Heng worked them together. But it was too unfortunate that Xu Ning came too fast. He couldn't continue, so he could only stuff up Xu Ning's little mouth, not allowing him any chance to think or to be sober at all. Then naturally he wouldn't resist when he does things that were increasingly over the top. As time went by, Xu Ning was starting to get short on air. As his vision darkened, he fainted in Xu Heng's embrace. Xu Heng did not let him off this time. With a tug of his hand, he pulled off Xu Ning's top domineeringly and sprayed his thing on the little one's chest. Then he wiped it off again with his hand, just like a beast marking its territory. Xu Heng panted and pulled Xu Ning into a hug, then kissed him lightly. "I love you." When Xu Ning woke up, Xu Heng was not present anymore. His little hand swept and clawed everywhere. He had no recollection of what happened after that at all, but he felt slightly uncomfortable below. Could it be? Shocked, Xu Ning hurriedly moved his hand over to touch his behind, and sat up in disappointment. He had actually been kissed on his chest as well. Xu Heng was just wise and did not leave any marks. Looking for the evidence of their night of passion now, Xu Ning could only be disappointed. Xu Heng came upstairs with a bowl of porridge in hand, and the two both had their hearts racing, and their faces red. Xu Ning was even more ashamed as he lowered his head, grasping onto his blanket. Did he regret it? Xu Heng walked to the side of the bed and sat down, then he put down the tray. "Are you hungry? Should I feed you?" He nodded. Xu Ning felt himself quite successful. Just wait, he'll definitely find a way to turn Xu Heng into a wolf, but he can't be too rushed about it. Since they've already developed a sexual relationship, Xu Heng had slightly less concerns as he held Xu Ning with one hand, his finger smoothing past his face every so often, touching his chin, and rubbing his ear. His movements were very natural. With his other hand, he fed him skillfully. When his little brother's mouth would be stained every so often by porridge or salted vegetable juice or whatnot, Xu Heng would immediately lower his head to lick it clean. "Xu Ning, how embarrassing, how embarrassing, how embarrassing. Progress is good, this is a joyous thing." Xu Heng was even happier. Not only had their original relationship been restored, there was even a great improvement. Although Ning only knew that they'd rubbed one out last night, Xu Heng had done even more after he fell unconscious. He even touched his small little hole. This is the place he will be using in the future, so he paid much attention to it. He had already decided that he will come back immediately after he receives his degree in M country, then he would loosen the opening every day. Then things can progress when it's just about right. No matter whether Xu Ning knew about relationships or not, things have already reached this stage. There was no chance for him to regret about it now. Xu Heng's love for him was too deep, and there was no way for him to turn back. Since the little one thinks that 16 is all right, then he will wait for the day of their birthday, the night of the 17th. Then I will turn this little guy completely mine. Xu Ning was full and he licked the corners of his mouth subconsciously. Xu Heng's eyes were extremely profound as he put down the spoon, and lifted up the little one's chin gently, then kissed him without any hesitation. Chapter 95. You are listening at novelfull.audio. So fierce this early in the morning. Xu Ning blinked his eyes foolishly. It wasn't until Xu Heng's big hand covered his eyes before Xu Ning closed them, his mind still muddled and silly, and carefully tastes the perfect feelings given to him by his big brother. Just like an ember dropping to a pile of dry firewood, wasn't it? At the very least Xu Heng held him very, very tight. Xu Ning hummed and gasped charmingly, he was very into it. They've only kissed for several minutes, things haven't even started to heat up and they hadn't touched each other yet when a knock came on the door. Who the hell is being such a cockblock? Disrupting our merry time, how inhumane / the lips parted, both still unsatisfied. Xu Ning pursed his lips and peeked tactfully at Xu Heng's unhappy expression. There was no need to wonder who the one knocking on the door was, it was their unreliable father. Xu Heng was sophisticated after all. He immediately pulled up Xu Ning's clothes, tidying his appearance, then he put the tray down beside him and pulled up the blanket before getting up. As he walked he settled his own appearance, and by the time he opened the door, Xu Heng was already in perfect condition. Xu Qing entered, totally ignorant to what his two sons were secretly doing behind his back. Xu Ning's face was red and his eyes damp, appearing slightly hazy. Just one look and he could tell that he slept very well, and have yet to wake up completely. Xu Cheng's lips curled into a smile. I've come to take a look at the both of you. Xu Heng leaned by the doorway, his gaze unhurried. You can just send me a text message for that sort of thing, Dad. This little, Xu Qing gave him a look to express his dissatisfaction, then raised his hand to touch Xu Ning's soft hair. His second son was a cute and good boy, soft and supple, whereas his eldest son was serious and difficult to engage with. It was Xu Yao instead who was even worse than a monkey. He really was a big headache. Hopefully Qin Yuzhuo will be able to discipline him well. Dad morning. Xu Ning finally managed to smooth out his breath, and dared to talk now. With a smile, even the snow outside started to melt. Recently, Xu Cheng, who had been very tired, planned to go outside, but his sons were too cute, so his butt sank down to sit by Xu Ning. Then he pulled him in for a hug, and a few pats and needs, treasuring him for quite a long amount of time. Xu Ning was happy, the only thing lacking was a wagging tail. Dad is the best, smiley face. Xu Ning wanted to monopolize his pampering. Xu Cheng had 3 kids, I have to be second. Xu Heng, #still not leaving. It felt so sour inside. Could it be I'm jealous? Forget it, I can't get jealous over my stepfather. Xu Heng picked up the tray and left. His stepfather definitely had a lot he wanted to talk about. His body had been in poor condition recently and he had become more emotional. Even though several fleas had been using this opportunity to cause trouble, they weren't punished heavily. Xu Heng's eyes narrowed to show a very gloomy expression. If he can't lay down the bar, then I'll do it. Xu Qing would have been sad if Xu Gao were to fall to illness before he went, but it wouldn't be enough to cause him to fall ill from it. Xu Ning could relate to him and felt very sad, so with just he and his father in the room, they spoke for a long time, talking about the sad things, and their tears even started to flow. Xu Qing was the head of the family, so he could not cry, but Xu Ning allowed him to. It would always be better to cry it out than to bottle it up. When Xu Qing let himself go, he was willing to share some of the bigger issues with Xu Ning, but as soon as he touched upon the company, Xu Ning would jump left and right around the topic, displaying his skill in changing the topic. Xu Qing was a wise man, he understood, and so he sighed. Although Xu Gao did not leave any last words, he would talk to him about Xu Ning on a normal day. Xu Yao only had some shares, but it was different for Xu Ning. He wasn't raised in the ancestral home after all. It may not have been Xu Gao's fault, but as a grandfather, the head of the family is duty-bound, so it was a matter that brought him guilt. And so, in addition to his part of the shares he should be receiving, he would still inherit the businesses under Xu Gao's name. Xu Qing had heard Xu Gao grumbling about it twice, but as for how much he mentioned, he didn't count at that time. While he was sorting out the inheritance, he found something within the safe. In front of Xu Ning, Xu Qing magically pulled out a small book. It had a simple appearance in a dark gray, and what was written inside were the items to be given to Xu Ning. At first Xu Ning did not take it, but Xu Qing stuffed it into his arms. This book looked to have quite some background to it. It had an air about it that almost seemed to imply the old era it came from. Xu Ning picked it up seriously and flipped to the first page of it, looking through it seriously. These were all things to be given to him by Xu Gao, one in each page, and there were even comments written below. This was Xu Gao's gift to him. It was something even more touching to receive than some property. Xu Heng's eyes were filled with the reflection of Xu Ning. He knew that this was a good child who had no greedy desires. He was pure and honest, even caring much for his family. Was that why he would not forgive his mother? Suddenly, the things he could never figure out finally connected in his head. Xu Qing sighed, and circled around Xu Ning to hug him from behind, looking at the words his father had written with him. Xu Ning's fingers caressed the word with nostalgia. He pondered over the feelings his grandpa felt when he wrote these words, while Xu Qing had also touched those noble words that had much character as dragons dancing in the wind, as if he could see that unfathomable look of his father's face. Xu Heng had already arrived at the company, and 3 of the personal assistants were waiting for him below. These were all Xu Cheng's men and would also take orders from Xu Heng normally. The 4 of them rode the elevator up to the top floor, then in big strides they entered the chairman's office. Xu Zixian had a start when he received the news. Why had he come? What right did he have? Damn it, I thought Xu Cheng was sick and things were looking bright for me. Xu Zixian rubbed his chin and his eyes were exceptionally sharp. When he received the verbal notice from Xu Heng asking him to study overseas, Xu Zixian had played a small trick and refused it, but he would have never thought that he would use the company's power to send him directly out for a business trip. Xu Zixian knew that this was no simple matter, and sure enough, a new company had many needles that needed to be threaded. Would you still want to move if you were seated on the position of the vice general manager? Xu Zixian had been trapped in F City. If he were to have gone overseas obediently at the start, he could still have chosen where he wanted to do, but right now, the power in F country all belonged to Xu Heng, while Xu Zixian became something neither fish nor fowl, and ended up as his lackey. If he did his work well, naturally there would be a chance for him to return to transfer back to his country, but if he didn't, he would not receive a good position even if he managed to return. But of course, he could feign illness or run back to the country all of a sudden, then he could avoid the necessary requirements for him to get on the plane. If he really came back to the country that way, Xu Zixian would probably never be able to work for the Xu clan ever again. And so, he worked 10 times harder than everyone else. While attending the best school he displayed his outstanding performance at work. Then when he received his degree, he successfully returned to the country and entered the company as a senior executive. He was clearly 2 years older than Xu Heng, but they got their degrees at the same time. This really made Xu Zixian so angry he could spit blood, and the degree of C country wasn't as valuable as a degree from M country. Xu Heng, this made Xu Zixian's eyes dyed red with blood. Xu Heng had pressed him down with just his fundamentals alone. He would always be 1 head lower than him, losing all his rights to compete with him. Picking up his documents, Xu Zixian had to visit the chairman's office. Because a simple meeting was taking place inside, Xu Zixian had to sit out for nearly an hour, and drank 2 cups of coffee. The personal assistants from within came out in a stream before they informed Xu Zixian to enter. Xu Heng sat at Xu Cheng's seat, showing no hint of disposure, and he didn't raise his head to look at Xu Zixian either. No matter how much he hated him at heart, he still kept a normal face. Xu Zixian with a bright smile on his face came to him, appearing extremely nice. Brother Heng, this is the latest contract for the cooperation case with the Shen clan, have a look. Call me acting chairman in the office. Manager Gu is the one responsible for this cooperation case. Why is it with you? My sister's running a high fever and manager Gu had already contacted Chairman Shu about it, so I'm now responsible for following up on this case. After all, Chairman Shen is a crafty old fox, not an easy guy to deal with. Xu Qing still showed some consideration to Guya, but Xu Heng was cold and pitiless. Xu Zixian complained in his heart, Xu Heng wouldn't make things hard for a woman, would he? A lot of CEOs had this problem. They don't feel that a woman is up for the bigger tasks, but Guya was actually in one of the top positions within the Shu clan, and she was one of the stronger women outside, who dared to look down on her. Thinking about this, Xu Zixian felt some slight indignation. Xu Heng was clearly 2 years younger than him, but he had to show him respect and call him big brother, really makes one mad. Xu Heng was actually just looking at the cooperation case. He had never ever looked down on any women. Among his confidants alone were quite a lot of women. Their 2 aunties who took care of Xu Ning did not have any special skills, but they did their jobs properly. They may make some small mistakes, but they would never make a big one. They had a strict mouth. No matter how much the neighbors tried to ask about Xu Ning's identity and background, they would never get what they want, and for that they had Xu Heng's trust. 10 minutes had passed before Xu Heng opened his mouth to speak. The price is too low, bring it up to the average. What? Xu Zixian had spent a lot of effort to lower the price and suppress the Shen clan's company, but Xu Heng actually asked him to raise it. What is he thinking, has he gone mad? Xu Heng was far-sighted. You don't understand. Please enlighten me. The Shu clan had just swallowed up the He clan. A tall tree catches the wind. It's not appropriate for us to try to suppress another company, especially not a big group like the Shu clans. His trick had been seen through. There was no change in Xu Zixian's demeanor. He was quickly able to find the steps off the stage. We've already discussed about the contract. It will damage the company's image if we change it anymore, so how about this? We'll find a replacement for them elsewhere. Do you think that will work? It will do. Xu Zixian left to do his work. When he returned to his office, his face was covered in gloom. The Shen clan had just suffered a big loss in the He clan's development project a few years back, so they've been going downhill. So what if they were a big group? Just looking at how the He clan was brought down, you would know. If we get to the end of it, Xu Heng just like to suppress me. For the sake of the bigger picture, Xu Zixian could only follow suit and rang Guya's phone. Mom. Xu Heng found out. What? Guya's face changed immediately. She was very nervous. How could that happen? I made sure that there were no holes in the plan. No holes. The boat's sinking down into the Pacific Ocean. Her son could still make a joke, so it seems this situation may not be all that serious. Guya sighed a breath of relief. If that's the case, we'll pull back for now, then we can look for another opportunity in the future. Mom, take good care of little sis, I can deal with this. Alright, Guya hung up. What a headache, she could only give up a rook to save the king now. Speaking of Xu Zihui, Guya was extremely depressed. Seeing that Xu Gao died, it took her much effort and hard work to bring her back from overseas to participate in his funeral, but in the end, she ran over to mock He Ran and was strictly disciplined by the Wen family after they found out. After all, He Ran's brother He Jion was still around. How could she be this stupid? Guya sent another few messages out to tell her subordinates to withdraw cleanly. It will be bad if Xu Heng were to catch on to their weaknesses. Knowing is one thing, but having no evidence was still useless. Guya put down many mazes so that the Shen clan would suffer a loss. Now nobody dared to work with them. Lowering the prices now forced the Shen clan to cooperate with her, and she promised them a lot of rebates. Then she will start to pick up on the price again. But Xu Heng suddenly stepped his foot in this. Now all of Guya's efforts had been done in vain. That old thief in the Shen clan was no ordinary man. He had set up the stage for Guya to dance on, but Xu Heng was the one who realized and put a stop to it. If not, the one to suffer in the end would not only be Guya, it would be the company as well. She just hasn't realized it. Xu Heng set up a meeting immediately, and not only did he clean up some of the executives who participated in this matter, he even fired several relatives who took this opportunity to start a mess. All of a sudden, everyone was at risk. At this crucial moment, Xu Heng promoted several people as well, so that those who work hard could see hope, and the company was in good shape again. After a day's work, Xu Heng cut down a lot of people. After knowing about it, Xu Qing frowned deeply. Those relatives had all been old people, why couldn't they just come to a compromise? Xu Ning sat by Xu Cheng's side. After seeing that he hung up, he saw his father press on Xu Heng's name again, so he immediately went up to butter up to him. Chapter 96. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dad, what are you doing? Xu Ning was anxious. He wasn't done thinking yet, so he thought of a way to delay Xu Qing first. Xu Qing, who was angry at heart, but only revealed a small bit of it on his face, turned to look towards Xu Ning. You're still young, so don't get in between this, be good. Seeing that his dad was going to press on the call button, Xu Ning grabbed his arm. Dad, brother's coming home soon, can't this wait until after dinner? It will affect his appetite. That's true for you, not him. This time Xu Ning simply decided to just press himself over. Dad, what? You're not going to let me nag at him? I know what brother is like, he's not the type of person to start something out of nowhere. There was definitely something wrong with those people. Dad, the people who brother thought had to be fired, I don't believe that there was nothing wrong about them with you. Look into my eyes and tell it to me straight. Xu Qing was silent for a moment. Xu Ning's bet was right. After all, the memories of his past life wasn't all powerful _angle _ Dad, don't be angry, some things will have to be dealt with sooner or later. You don't understand, those are some of the older folks in the company, and they worked very hard too when they were young. Firing them would make me lost the trust of the others. Even if they were wrong, I have to be the one to fire them. We have to do it slowly, one by one, before I can hand the renewed company over to the two of you. He's already snipped off the wings of others as soon as he got promoted. How is he going to keep hold of the company in the future? Ning Ning, it's very important to take note of the feelings of others. So that's how it is. Dad isn't blaming Big Brother, but Big Brother was just being too cruel. Oh, an emperor from the ancient times would also kill a lot of people before he died, taking out all the hidden dangers. Then the prince will be in a much more comfortable position after he inherits the throne. The words may seem rough, but the logic behind it wasn't. This was what Xu Qing meant. Dad, it's not a bad idea to clean them up slowly, then it wouldn't leave any marks, but the effects of chopping them off in one go is more effective, and you could still use it as a display to frighten those with bad intentions. Is that not so? You youngsters only know about doing things the quick and easy way. Xu Qing leaned back on the sofa, and held tight the little one who pounced over to him, not allowing him to leave. This was the benefit normally enjoyed by Xu Heng, while this was Xu Cheng's first time. What a wonderful feeling. This is warm, don't move. Xu Ning Sigma, degree, Dad, I'm already 16 growing to 170 centimeters soon, is it proper for you to hold me like this? Xu Qing still wouldn't let go even after seeing Xu Ning's awkward appearance. He was held tightly by an arm even stronger and thicker than Xu Heng's. I can see from all the hugging the two of you brothers usually do, that you've got a pretty good relationship, and I'm very pleased about that. And so Xu Ning went soft, and lowered his head to press down on Xu Cheng's shoulder. Dad, you can hold Xu Yao too. Xu Yao is my son, but aren't you my son as well? But I'm grown now, you are, and maybe if you grow even more I won't have the strength to hug you anymore. Being able to hold you while I still can is a blessing too. Dad, I was wrong, don't say any more /oh, / no you're not. If I had a daughter she'd definitely enjoy hanging around her dad. Just look at your big brother, he doesn't make much physical contact, he has facial paralysis, aloof, never makes jokes, just like a small little old man. Thankfully he doesn't walk with his hands behind his back, or he really could have traveled to the ancient past. Ha ha ha, Xu Ning laughed softly. His dad was right, this was how Big Brother was in the eyes of others too. Oh that's right, Dad, he wasn't like this when he was young, right? Can you tell me some funny things about him? Sure, has he wet the bed before? Now this is a classic, he's such a god, something special must have happened, right? He did, how could he not have? Fuck me, that's great. Shu Ning was excited. Then, does he drool? Of course, how could he not? His mom personally made a bib for him to tie around his neck while eating, haha, he had no neck at all when he was young, his head looked as if it were attached directly to his shoulders, he had these big round eyes, long eyelashes, super cute, he's not long-faced like he is now with his cold eyes, not cute at all. Dad, did he play with bugs when he was young? All boys have probably played with them, right? Heh, he did, boy he had fun with that, he brought a small little bottle out and secretly kept a ton of bugs in it, and he had no place to hide them so he just put them all under his pillow. When the maid came to clean up, she shook the sheets and a pile of bugs came falling out, she was so scared that she screamed and there was even a big green bug hanging from her head. She's already an old lady who's been working for us for over 20 years and she was a staid and quiet person. Don't you think Heng was naughty when he was young? Did he play with mud? This was a good one. Does building a house with it count? The son of a mouse knows how to dig a hole, so naturally the son of my dad would know how to build a house. That's a fun metaphor, I'll tell Shu Heng about it later. Don't, Dad, I was wrong, tell me more, I can't really think about much right now, but did he fight with others in the past? Yeah, and quite many too, generally with his cousins at home. He fought with Xu Zixian from the second house several times and I'm always the one who had to apologize for him. He beat Xu Zixian till his nose was bruised and his face swollen, he's too heavy-handed, he's been that way since he was young, I had quite the headache too when I was raising him, he's always been wily and righteous and would never apologize no matter what, just like Xu Yao, you're the only good baby we have at home. That's why I died, and they're alive and kicking. How silly is that, baby number 2, Dad is praising you. What the hell is baby number 2? Shu Ning stopped talking so Shu Cheng was trying to make him laugh, talking about the other embarrassing things Shu Heng did when he was young, especially how he lost his pants during his middle school sports meet. He calmly tied his top around his waist with the hem hanging down, and nobody around him actually noticed, it was too funny. Just thinking about his big brother's tall appearance standing in the crowd with his dead facial muscles, with a breeze flowing between his legs, he couldn't resist laughing out loud. That's too funny, if someone pulled off his jacket wouldn't he be so embarrassed he could die? Aren't there any naughty children around him? Of course. Who? Shu Qing pursed his lips, Shu Ning was too excited about this, even his eyes were shining, stretching his neck out and staring at him, so he ignored some little details and only reacted after his body was pulled into the air, out from Shu Cheng's arms. The only one who could snatch him from his arms was only Shu Heng. Oh, I'm dead, I was caught, this won't do, I have to pretend to be calm. Brother, you're back. Shu Ning's mouth was faintly twitchy at the edges, this was as they say, extreme joy begets sorrow, he wanted to listen to his scandals no matter what and was hard by the owner. Would he beat me up? Recalling those slaps on his butt in the past, Shu Ning's face reddened mysteriously, it was too embarrassing. If I don't come back won't you be ascending up to heaven by now? He I wet the bed too when I was young actually, I played with mud too and I've caught bugs, I've climbed the walls, gone into the water to catch fish, drooled, / did he go silly from shock. He had actually confessed everything just like that, even Shu Cheng wanted to cover up his face. Shu Heng took him away directly from the living room, returning to the master bedroom on the second floor and throwing the gloomy Shu Ning down on the bed, then pressing himself on top of him. Did you have fun listening to all that? Of course I had fun, would I die if I said that? Shu Heng squeezed open Shu Ning's little mouth. If you don't want to talk about it then we don't have to, take a breath. Woo, this kiss tasted good, spicy, and lingered on for quite a long time. Shu Heng was able to find an opportunity to bully Shu Ning as soon as he came back, while Shu Ning was also willing to be played around by him, allowing him to slide his hands around inside of his clothes. Their pants were taken off and the two piles of flesh were formed into thousands of shapes. When he released him, his body was filled with red fingerprints. Xu Heng had used a fair bit of force and had been slightly rough. Xu Ning had quite some reaction from it and liked it a lot. He arched his back and worked hard to stick over to him, holding onto his big brother's neck with one arm, trying his best to respond to his kiss, and his other hand was circled around his exceptionally firm waist. Learning from him, he also stuck his hand in. The texture of his brother's skin was great, smooth, supple, delicate, and alluring. This is really setting the gun off while polishing it, wasn't it? Xu Heng's eyes were extremely dark and the angels were fighting in his mind, do it don't, using the legs were fine as well. The look on his brother's face right now was already intoxicated and he had a reaction down below, it should be fine even if he used his legs. Xu Heng thought things through thoroughly, he didn't want Xu Ning to regret it afterwards, so he simply took off their clothes down below, but kept their top. With that, Xu Ning had some cover so he probably wouldn't be too embarrassed about it. And sure enough, Xu Ning's face was flushed red, but he did not reject him. His entire body shook pitifully, and Xu Heng caressed, touched, and kissed him lovingly, clasping Xu Ning's legs tight together with his own. Then the big object was forcefully pushed between the little one's legs. Xu Ning was completely stunned on the spot. Is he not going to do it? Oh heavens! Oh, what am I going to do? His mind turned blank. That thing was bouncing, flesh touched upon flesh, rattling the earth. It was too shocking. He decided it best to just shut his eyes. Oh no, his heart was beating like a drum and his blood was boiling, his body was shaking so much that it was about to fall apart. This was the first time in his life, this had never happened even in his past life, too nervous, truly too nervous, he was sweating. Don't be afraid, it's me. Brother, Heng, do it softer, I'm scared, even if it hurts, I'll be the only one who can give you that feeling, got that? Ning seemed to have understood only half of it, but that does not matter, it will be fine once he grows up. To be able to do this together, Xu Heng was very satisfied. He spoke to Xu Ning to pull his attention away, then feeling that he was accepting it well, he began to move immediately. Wu Xu Ning sucked in a breath as soon as it brushed past, and immediately covered his mouth. Xu Heng's pupils shrank, it felt too good. He pressed down hard on Xu Ning, and both his hands worked to loosen his collar, then lowered his head to bite into his skin. Xu Ning was shaking madly, his brother was just like a beast, his aggressiveness was too strong, so strong that he didn't even dare to open his eyes nor move, enduring it silently with his mouth pursed tightly together. He was afraid that if he made a sound that he would make a fool of himself. Xu Heng still had some logic left in him, so he pulled Xu Ning's hand away and kissed that charming little face. You're great, and beautiful, have some more confidence will you? Call out, I like hearing it. Oh heavens, Xu Ning swallowed his saliva. If he hadn't seen it he wouldn't have known, but after seeing it, he couldn't move his eyes away. His brother's enamored face was too sexy, especially his gaze, as if Xu Ning was the only one in the world to him, that feeling was too great and wonderful. The object between my legs proved his love for me. Xu Ning hugged Xu Heng's neck and nudged him affectionately. Brother, as if something had blown up in Xu Heng's mind, he could not speak, and he sped up abruptly. That thing had grown even bigger now as it pounded heavily downwards, pa, the sound very extremely loud, mixing into the sounds of Xu Ning's gasps and pleading. Did it hurt? It hurt Xu Heng's heart very much, but he immediately moved downwards, continuing. Ah. Xu Ning didn't want to make any sound because it felt cheap of him, but he didn't know why he couldn't endure it. His waist was held tight and he couldn't move at all. His big brother was so strong, so fierce, and so alluring. Xu Ning was completely intoxicated. His heart trembled, touching the sweat on his brother's back. Xu Ning felt very happy. After 10 minutes, Xu Heng moved downwards once more. The R between Xu Ning's legs were red and it was slightly startling. He was pale and not hurt, just that his skin would turn red for a moment when touched. This was a special characteristic of Xu Ning's body, Xu Heng knew, but he still felt distress and pity in his heart. Chapter 97. You are listening at novelfull.audio. And so he would move to a different spot after doing it a while, but his calves looked pretty good as well, he could try them out next time. After changing to several positions, he came back to the area he started with, tightly working the area where he connected with Xu Ning, and both the excited objects were touching. They were wet and heavy, mutually communicating with each other intimately. Xu Ning was out of it for a moment, turns out he had released that it felt so good. After half an hour, Xu Heng came out. He took himself out quickly on purpose so as to not scare the little one, but if he had slowed down halfway, it would actually have been fine to take it easy and move about for another hour. Xu Heng was the high-endurance type, but he cared more about the little one's feelings. The place where he had passed through was so tender, swelling up slightly. Xu Ning covered his face, having his legs spread by his big brother for inspection or whatnot, I don't know, it's too embarrassing. Sensing the touch of his fingers, how very careful and light they were, was he feeling sorry. The feeling of being loved was wonderful. Xu Ning took a breath, it felt a little as if they'd done it, it had been so intense and exciting, so very indescribable. His poor little brother was still shivering, Xu Heng simply lay beside him, pulling him into his arms and comforting him softly, and kissing him. The little one had also released twice earlier, the first one came quickly but the second one came almost at the same time as him. It seems that they had quite some fat with each other, it came out by itself without any special care from him. That's very good, my little brother liked me too, it wouldn't be like this if that weren't the case. Xu Heng was wise, the two of them were sticking to each other and did not go for a bath immediately, comforting him after the deed had to be done with care and thought. Xu Heng had done his research and also studied psychology, he tried as much as possible to reduce the burden in Xu Ning's heart, to love him, and not hurt him. But Xu Heng gladly endured this hardship. Xu Ning's whole body had gone soft and could barely move if at all, he liked very much to lie quietly with his brother and didn't even ask to be bathed, the room was filled completely with the smell of that. Brother, are you scared? Shaking his head, Xu Ning hesitated before he spoke. Do we count as a couple now? I haven't agreed. Alright. Xu Ning, Can't you coax me? Can you really not coax me just a little bit? Half an hour had passed before they went for their bath, and they nearly had an accident again. Really, after all, he's finally learned the taste of it. Xu Heng was hard and Xu Ning felt great inside. Let's see how you'll enjoy that. He wanted to see what would happen if he used more honeyed words on him, but it was already very good that an aloof male god such as Xu Heng could fall in love with him. Xu Ning's heart felt very good and content, peering secretly with his little eyes at Xu Heng's serious face. He had a very determined personality, his heart would stay with whoever he falls in love with for the rest of his life. Brother. Nothing. What's wrong? Xu Heng looked over with his deep and dark eyes, just like a dark abyss, causing the attention a certain someone who accidentally met his eyes to be drawn away. Xu Heng pulled Xu Ning into his arms. Do you feel uncomfortable? No, wash me more gently. Xu Heng paid great attention, there was no need at all for Xu Ning to remind him. After their bath, he wrapped him up well with a big towel and carried him out directly, then wiped off the water from his hair and body carefully. The room had been aired out and the sheets changed, the air was fresh again. Xu Ning's body was flushed red in a bashful blush, and he waited until Xu Heng was done busying about before Xu Ning crawled under the blanket in a swoosh and wasn't willing to come out anymore. Xu Heng laughed silently to himself. He settled himself, put his clothes on proper, then went out for a moment. When he came back, a tube of ointment was in his hands. Xu Ning wasn't sleepy, after all it was still quite early in the day and they had still yet to have their dinner yet. Xu Heng walked to the bed and sat down, then peeled open the blanket bellow, pulling apart Xu Ning's legs. Xu Ning sat up in a rage, then after looking clearly, his heart started to quicken mysteriously, and his eyes flickered. There was ointment over the slender pale fingers of his big brother, and it was being applied to the red and swollen places on his body, giving him a comfortably refreshing feeling. His throat feeling parched, Shu Ning wanted to say a little something. That, brother, it's not like I'm a flower vase, I'll be fine in a while even without the ointment. Shu Heng did not speak, he was done applying it. He put down the pair of snowy white little legs and covered them back up with the blanket, then he looked towards Shu Ning with unmatched tenderness. What do you want to eat? Ha! Ah! Shu Ning's entire body was trembling, the look in his brother's eyes is too much, even the tip of his ears were red. What do you want to eat tonight? Oh no, I don't dare to look at him, what do I do? Oh heavens, there's no saving my heart. Ning dragging his words. His voice was so deep and pleasant, even my brain is going to be pregnant, Shu Ning dropped underscore. Angle underscore, what's wrong? Shu Heng hurriedly went forward to check, and found that Shu Ning's eyes were going in circles as if he had gone dizzy. The corner of Shu Heng's mouth twitched. I'll settle it, you're tired so lay down like a good boy and stay on the bed, alright. Okay. Shu Heng lowered his head to give him a kiss before leaving reluctantly. Shu Ning peered at him secretly, and when Shu Heng who had reached the doorway turned back to look at him, Shu Ning hid himself quickly like a thief. Shu Heng could rest his worries, and he went to the kitchen to grab a warm glass of milk, ordered some red braised pork, grilled wings, eggplants, and whatnot, totaling to 8 dishes and a soup, then had the maid send it over to the door of the main bedroom on the second floor. Shu Ning picked up his phone and wanted to play on it for a moment, but his brain ended up filled with Shu Heng's shadow, overbearing and handsome, and that unbearably sexy look on his face from earlier. Ah! Shu Ning huddled into a circle, they actually did it, they really, actually did it. He thought he would wait for a really long time but this was good too, the soup was already over, so the days of trying out the flesh wouldn't be long, right? He will become mine sooner or later, his face started to blush and his heart quickened again. Shu Ning held his face with 2 hands, and the door opened. Shu Heng entered and sat on the edge of the bed. Have some milk, your voice is starting to get hoarse from calling out. Shu Ning threw a pillow. How could he make fun of me like that just now? What is he saying this now for? Bragging about your great stamina, throat, and energy. Ning Ning, drink it up before you throw a tantrum at me. Who's throwing a tantrum? Drink your milk if you're not. His verbal skills aren't up to par with his either, When Shu Ning sat up, Shu Heng moved his eyes elsewhere immediately, because there were some unspeakable traces left on the little one's shoulders, made by him. Cough cough cough, Shu Heng was also starting to get embarrassed and his eyes moved left and right, and ended up at the perfect curves of the little one's neck, gulping down his milk sip by sip. Why am I getting thirsty as well underscore I want to eat him up, Shu Heng decided he should just bring over a normal set of sleepwear. The maid pushed the dining cart into the elevator and brought it up to the second floor, then reaching the door she gave it a knock and left. Shu Ning was already dressed and he yawned, watching Shu Heng busy about, he really was gentle and thoughtful. The food was here, it smelled so good, giving me some meat after some physical exercise. Shu Ning looked towards Shu Heng's perfect body with a provocative gaze, admiring him. I want to eat rice. Be a good boy, drink more porridge, it'll soothe your throat. I asked them to put less salt, and these dishes are the ones you usually like to at. Shu Heng had already put the small table on the bed, then placed the dishes on one by one, and then his chopsticks. Shu Ning felt very vexed, so he didn't squabble with him any longer. He is God's favored son and yet he has to work hard for me, what a great feeling. Brother, I can eat by the table, it'll be tiring for you to do so much. I'm fine, your legs aren't well so let me do it. No, I'm quite well, Shu Ning stood up and moved a little, showing that he really was fine and was in no pain at all. Then let's have another round at night. Hello. Do you still have shame? His shame is shattered underscore, dot angle, underscore. After their meal, Shu Heng went to the study. Xu Ning was very worried for his safety, so he followed along up to the third floor, coming to the door in front of the two mighty bodyguards, and stuck his ear to the door. The faces two bodyguards were covered with black lines. What is this? What is going on? What is he doing? Young master. What are you doing? Young master. You can just go inside, young master. We won't stop you, you knew that, right? Oh. Within the study, Shu Heng was sitting in an aloof manner atop the sofa with his legs crossed and his face indifferent, drinking a cup of coffee. His whole person was sharp like a sword, a far cry from when he was with Xu Ning. They were simply two different people. This was the real Shu Heng, the true emperor, mysterious and proud. Xu Qing walked to his side and sat down. His big hand gave his long legs a pat and did not move away after. You've gone out of line, don't touch the rest anymore, I have my own ideas on what to do with them. Dad, indecisiveness will lead to disaster. Shu Heng. Aren't you passing the company to me? If I don't even have the right to speak, then forget it. Xu Qing looked towards Shu Heng inside. You're old now, so your mind is set more than ever and nobody can change that. You even dare to violate my choices. Dad, the look in Shu Heng's eyes were unhurried, and he told him about what happened today. Both Guya and Xu Zixian are planning something. I've already put the evidence on your table, please take a look at it when I leave. You can say that they've got their eyes on making a profit, but you can't say that they are trying to betray us. Dad, your feelings for them makes it hard for you to believe it, and I can understand, but my principles have a limit too, and you know that. If it was just greed, getting kickbacks, or even taking money from the company's internal funds, I'm not the chairman, so I won't care about that, and I'm in no position to do anything about it either, but their goal this time is you, Dad. That's impossible. There's been too many disasters coming on from appeasement. The Shu family isn't just a hunk of metal either, so I don't care if you mind or not, but I will definitely care about that. They aren't using Shenxiang Dong to deal with me. One Shenxiang Dong is nothing, but what about several of him? With He clan as the example, if we were to attack the Shen clan, out of risk, the end result is that everyone would join together to fight against the Shu clan. That's not enough to cause worry. That's right, but it's not good form. The market is turbulent, and if the Shu family's in a tight spot, whose wrong would it be? The chairman's dereliction. Guya, who has been secretly gathering shares, has already acquired all the shares in the second house. I won't make a move on them for just that. Alright then, I'll end it at just peeling a layer off her skin. Can they still live with their skin gone? Xu Qing still wanted to speak, but Shu Heng had already stood up. Dad, Ning Ning should be brushing his teeth now, I'll go look. After he left, Xu Qing finished his coffee before going over to pick up the documents and flipping them through to look. The things written inside were very indeed quite interesting. Xu Qing knew that Guya was two-faced, so no matter what she did, Xu Qing would pretend he hadn't seen it as long as she didn't go out of line. Who asked his cousin to betray her? But I didn't betray her, I'll just go with Shu Heng's arrangements this time. His dad was gone, but he was still here, so even more so he would not let Shu Heng make a move on the second house. For an old man, neither money or power is more important than for his family to live comfortably. Qin Yuxue knocked on the door and came in, carrying a steaming pot of hot soup. Bedo them, leave that to the servants. Xu Qing put down the documents and picked up the spoon, then slowly ate it as he blew on it. Qin Yuxue's gaze swept towards those documents, and with a shrink of her pupils, she pretended to not have seen them. Xu Qing lowered his head and his gaze was exceptionally profound. On the next day, Shu Heng went to the office to settle everything, then transferred Xu Zixian. Not only did he remove his vision of the company, he even fired his confidants. Guya did not come to work, she was restless. She thought that this junior wouldn't fire the gun at her, but the result. The network she had cultivated in the financial department was completely broken. Chapter 98. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On that afternoon, Guya was able to find Xu Qing to make her complaints just like the group of old people who were fired, venting the dissatisfaction in their heart. Xu Qing did not comfort her, and he didn't need to. He tossed the documents prepared by Xu Heng over to her. Guya's face turned whiter by the second. She thought that her cleanup was very successful, but her weakness was still caught. Guya was, after all, no normal woman. She wasn't even embarrassed, she just sighed and not another word came of her. Xu Qing put down his teacup, and spoke with an insipid gaze. Sister. Hearing that word made Guya's heart jump. She had a bad feeling about this. Could something else have been exposed? Since the day you entered the Xu family doors, we've known each other for several decades. Ling Yun, that was too free, causing you much exhaustion, busying about at home and at work, and everybody has seen what you've done. Why are you suddenly talking about this? The seniors had a soft side for you, and perhaps you may not know, but the old man said before he passed that we are not to touch the second house, because the only one holding up the family is just one woman, and it's not easy. Guya was slightly moved. Xu Qing had never said such things before this, and especially not Xu Gao, but she was willing to believe it, who hadn't made mistakes at the start. No matter how many times it happened, it's already been done, and it will be so even if she ruins one of the bigger projects. Thinking about it really makes one sad. So it turns out Uncle had been treating me so sincerely. I promised Dad I'd take care of you and the second house, so your position won't be affected if you don't go overboard behind my back. I'll just pretend I never saw it, and it won't matter to me. I would even help you tuck your tail if someone ever investigates the matter. Guya was a smart woman. She looked towards Xu Qing with a steady gaze. What did he mean by all this? Are her benefits gone? Xu Qing moved on to the main topic. I've always been healthy, so I never expected that I too would be bedridden from sickness. The Xu clan will be under Xu Heng in the future. He's not your senior nor is he close to you, so even more so he would not be willing to let you out the back door. Sister, it's been many years, I hope you walk a good path ahead of you. Give them rice and they owe you, take it from them, and you owe them. Xu Qing caught the flash of a grim light flashing past Guya's eyes. He helped, and now that benefit was gone, what would she think of it? You have the ability to do it, so why don't you continue doing it? Someone who has already grown dependent on you would not be grateful, but would instead hate you, and you would become their enemy for the rest of their lives. On that year, Xu Gao told Xu Qing two stories about their neighbors. One was a poor man and the other a rich man. A natural disaster had broken out and the rich man had a good heart and helped to relieve the poor, while the poor thought, you're such a rich man, why can't you give me more? Why can't you just help me cross through the storm directly? A good man should help to the very end. This rich man is simply too terrible, he's heartless. Greedy people will never reflect on their own behavior, and they would never be grateful. That is why Xu Gao never told them, nor let Xu Qing tell them, so that the second house would not turn into dependent people who do not put effort in their work. But now having Xu Heng around the company was already a regular thing. Sooner or later the position of chairman would also belong to him. Even if he wanted to continue on with these unspoken rules, his son will be having none of it. Guya showed a bitter smile and put down her teacup. I understand Big Brother's intentions. I will keep my children in check, and thank you Big Brother for all these years of care. If not for that, I as a single woman that would really have to suffer. No matter the occasion, a woman could act frail and talk about their difficulties at the appropriate times, and with their teary eyes they could reduce a person's vigilance. Xu Qing was a man, and a powerful man at that. It was nothing even if you praise him to be indomitable. But perhaps his heart would still go soft. Guya used this to her own advantage and reddened her eyes. Xu Qing felt very sorry that his little brother did not protect this sister of his well. It really has been hard on her, and she even had to raise the child of her husband's lover, not allowing the state of the second house to decline. Xu Qing sighed and passed over a piece of tissue paper immediately, giving her a few words of consolation. But speaking back to it, Xu Qing did not owe her. The tiny bits of benefits she worried so much over were nothing in Xu Cheng's eyes. Xu Heng was her junior after all, so he wouldn't be willing to take care of Guya. Continuing what Xu Gao left, Xu Cheng couldn't help it either. Guya really was pitiful, but could she ever be more important than his sons? After Guya left, Xu Cheng felt very tired. He went upstairs to lay down. The bodyguard walked over to the bedside, and lowered his head to give his report. Qin Yushua did not make contact with Guya. Xu Cheng nodded and went to sleep. Xu Ning stood by the window, watching Guya walking on her high heels, leaving with her figure covered in gloom. His mouth curled into a smile. His efforts hadn't been wasted. If not, how would an aloof god like Xu Heng, who only roamed the skies, be able to notice this little toad in this stinking ditch? Xu Zixien was made to leave the country on that year, and his faults would last his entire life. If Xu Zixien knew that this all happened because he had intentions to get close to Xu Ning, and even fed him, would he vomit blood? As for Guya, her daughter had already come repeatedly to look for Xu Ning, making Xu Ning troubled. Xu Heng had been unhappy about that since a long time ago. Now, with the conspiracy with Shen Xiangdong crashing head-on, Xu Heng swung his knife and cut off both Guya and Xu Zixian's power, warning them of their misdeeds. In Xu Cheng's eyes, Guya and her family were pitiable, but this was a radiant existence in the outsider's eyes. They were like a delicious leg of a chicken. Xu Ning was secretly pleased with the situation. Xu Zixien became the laughing stock of the entire company. They told him to calm down, but why the hell the logistics department? Managing materials and the like, they were simply wasting his talents. But Xu Zixien still kept the bright smile on his face, and his attitude proper, handling all his work, be it big or small, in a straightforward manner, showing kindness and good hospitality to everybody, making everyone feel as if a spring breeze was blowing by. Such a character was really worth admiring. And so they all gossiped that Xu Zixien was too outstanding. Was the acting chairman unable to take him? Guya had already reached the company and found her son, who had found his spot in the logistics department, and he was still in the deputy position. This was simply bullying. Xu Zixien chatted with Guya in the tea room and swallowed down his anger. For now, Xu Heng will be leaving for M country soon. As soon as he leaves, Xu Cheng will return and everything will return to normal. Naturally, Guya understood. As soon as her phone lit up, a light flashed by Guya's eyes as she turned it on to see. "What's the matter, Mom?" Xu Zixien asked. Could it be they still had a chance? "Xu Ning is here at the company, and he's holding a thermos." "I understand now." Xu Zixien put down his cup and went out. Guya secretly quipped, dark willows and flowers in bloom lay in another village. Why didn't Xu Cheng make Xu Ning smarter when he made him? Humph. Xu Ning had just reached the company when he was stopped for not having an appointment. Xu Ning frowned and explained, but the two beauties didn't have it easy. They wanted to help him call the chairman's office to ask. Coincidentally, Xu Zixien came out and exclaimed to him in surprise. "Ning Ning, fourth brother." Xu Zixien, who was fourth in the seniority, laughed. He was old now and sensible. "Why are you here? Not to see me, are you?" Xu Ning felt slightly awkward. "Heh heh, long time no see. Come, have a cup of coffee with me before you go up. You'll have less problems getting up there too if I'm the one bringing you over. They're all good workers, so they can't go easy on you." The two beauties were already sweating. This boy was the second young master. Thankfully someone came over to help put in a good word for them. If not, they would have been in big trouble. Xu Ning knew how powerful word games could be, so he played the fool in trouble, and was brought away with Xu Zixien's strong grip on his shoulders. Xu Heng was in the office upstairs, and was very happy to receive his father's text message. But where is he? And so he took out his phone to look for news. Damn it, he was cut off. His gaze darkened extremely. The coffee shop was one of Xu Heng's businesses, and neither Xu Zixien nor Xu Ning knew. The surveillance cameras nearby moved, pointing straight towards the two. If any danger were to come to him, the workers would make their move immediately. Xu Zixien was ecstatic, ordering ice cream for Xu Ning. The 3-flavored one looks good, there were tons of toppings on top, it should be delicious. Xu Ning picked up the small spoon and took a bite, and when he lowered his head, Xu Zixian waited for a good opportunity, and wanted to rub Xu Ning's hair. Xu Ning, who was constantly on his guard, retreated backwards, and was not touched by him. The two mentioned Xu Zihui, she had gone somewhere else to study, but Xu Ning was apathetic. When his phone rang, Xu Zihui wanted to pat his hand. Pa! His hand was slapped away and Xu Zixian was slightly surprised, then immediately he gave him an amiable smile. But Xu Heng did not even look at him, he took Xu Ning with one hand and the thermos with the other, and left. There were many customers in the coffee shop, they were all white-collar workers from the office buildings nearby, with just one look they could tell Xu Zixian was no simple character, much less the more outstanding Xu Heng. All the gazes flowed towards them curiously. The employees under the Xu clan knew who Xu Zixian was, and they knew Xu Heng as well. Nobody was a fool. Xu Zixian must have done something, if not, why would the young master treat him that way? Not showing him even the tiniest hint of face. Xu Ning, naturally he did it on purpose. He gave him these opportunities on purpose, then moved according to the flow. He didn't expect that his brother would come this soon, spoiling Xu Ning's plans. But if his big brother had gotten angry, the outcomes of those people would be even worse, but the result was the same. Xu Ning didn't care how those people fell into misfortune, his big brother's face was dark, his own end may probably be quite miserable as well. There was a break room in the chairman's office, and Xu Ning was thrown into it by Xu Heng. They sat face to face and the high pressure was squeezing down on Xu Ning's head, it was very fierce. Brother, I didn't eat what he fed me. I know, you understand that he has no good intentions, don't you? I know, that's why I went over to see if he came in contact with my mother. When Xu Ning stuck his head to the door to eavesdrop, he was noticed by Qin Yuzhua. The two were separated by a distance of a few meters and spoke a few words in front of the bodyguards, but in fact she was hinting to Xu Ning, hoping that he could help her. Naturally Xu Ning agreed, it was a dream of his to be able to dig a pit for his mother. Brother, if you're worried about my safety, I won't do it anymore, here, eat some dumplings. Xu Qing found out that Xu Heng missed his lunch because of a meeting, so he had Xu Ning come over specially to deliver some food. Naturally Xu Heng was willing, the little one was becoming more thoughtful as he grew up, he liked him so much. Was it hard on you on the road? Brother, Xu Ning was gloomy, and slightly helpless. I came with the car, how could it have been hard? If you keep taking me as a flower vase you better watch out or I'll bite you at night. Got it. While eating his dumplings, Xu Heng fed 2 to Xu Ning, but he wasn't willing to take the third one. A glint flashed by Xu Heng's gaze, and he put the dumpling into his mouth, then passed it over to Xu Ning's little mouth. The dumbfounded Xu Ning, oh, the feeling of being forced to enjoy with Xu Heng, mixed with each other's saliva. It simply can't be described with words. They held each other and kissed for a long, long time. When it ended, be it Xu Ning or Xu Heng, both their faces were red and they were panting. Brother, finish up the rest of the dumplings, it won't be good for your stomach if they go cold. I'm not you, don't even talk about cool dumplings, I can eat them frozen. Xu Heng was obedient to Xu Ning, he could eat all the dumplings even if he had brought many. He was tall with a good body, so naturally he could eat a lot, his stomach was countless times larger than Xu Ning's. The way his big brother ate was so handsome and elegant, Xu Ning liked Xu Heng so he was perfect no matter how he looked at him. In good virtue, he thought to pour some soup for his brother, but he didn't think that his big brother would be so naughty. They shared another dumpling and the delicious taste lingered in their mouths, quickening their heartbeats. You look at me with eyes full of affection, and I the same. It wasn't until Xu Heng leaned in close again did Xu Ning sober up in a start. This is Dad's place. Chapter 99. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The ancestral home is Dad's, the company is Dad's, everything is Dad's, even you belong to him, so what's the problem with doing this here? Xu Heng's gaze was profound, staring straight at him, a powerful deterrence. The little cutie didn't dare to speak, trembling slightly, but Xu Ning had to stand up for himself. "You're being irrational." "Reason being. This is Dad's bed, we can't. We can't lay on it. So it's fine anywhere else." Ha. Why does it feel like things would get swept into the pouch no matter what he said? And a condom at that, too, does he want to do it? Oh God, has my big brother gone crazy? Xu Ning was dumbfounded. It has to be somewhere else. Alright, Xu Heng picked Xu Ning up and pressed him against the wall. Xu Ning, oh, what is this? His brain was starting to go weak. "Brother, what are you trying to do? You said it yourself, as long as it's not Dad's bed, anywhere else is fine." "Is that what I said?" Xu Ning's logic was forced offline by Xu Heng. His eyes were opened wide and big, very adorable, with his mouth slightly parted, super cute. Xu Heng pressed against him tightly. Because of their heights, Xu Ning had always been tiny and little in front of Xu Heng. For the sake of easy kissing, Xu Heng had raised him up when he pressed him against the wall. When his feet left the ground, his heart felt suspended as well. This was also the reason Xu Ning was afraid. However, it was natural that Xu Heng would not force Xu Ning to do it, he couldn't bear to. Other people would give you a big slap before handing you a sweet jujube, but Xu Heng's strategy was to scare you a bit then coax you better the rest of the day. Xu Ning had already gradually gotten used to it, so he agreed with everything. His little lips were kissed until they had gone numb. He had clearly come over to send dumplings, so why had it become him sending meat over? It was simply unbelievable. He didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. But if you really think about it, kissing in his dad's break room, and even doing it several times, felt rather exciting. Xu Heng would press him chin down every time, extending in lightly, dancing tongue with tongue, entangling together, bringing about a special feeling, and Xu Ning liked it a lot. It should be time to go, but Xu Heng wouldn't let Xu Ning go. He kept coaxing him to rest on his dad's bed, but Xu Ning wouldn't do it no matter what. But Xu Heng was a wise person, so he let him rest in a hotel for now. Then Xu Heng would go over to him after work at night. They had a home, but they had to go to a hotel to stay, and his big brother said it so seriously, so Xu Ning was at a loss. Something was definitely going to happen and he looked forward to it. Then he left, looking back at his brother every few steps he took. Xu Heng felt a ticklish feeling in his heart. If not for the fact that he felt that Xu Ning had a knot in his heart, he would definitely try to make him stay. The problem wasn't the bed, but rather the person who had rested on that bed before this. Xu Heng deliberately tried to pry deeper. He wanted to know whether Xu Ning was caring more about his dad or was he disgusted by his own mother. Qin Yuhua hadn't done anything bad even after returning for so long, not even when given the opportunity. With his stepdad's character, she may already have built her trust with him again. Xu Heng did not mind before this, but Xu Ning did, so he had to make preparations before the storm comes. He dialed the internal line and asked his personal assistant to come. Wan Jing had been hanging about the office for a whole half an hour, and this was rare. Xu Heng had always been very efficient, so even a meeting would be done and over with very quickly. He always settled it immediately and would never postpone it. He really was amazing, with clear thinking and a unique vision. He laid down his commands quickly in a big swoop. Some of the older ones simply could not adapt to this rhythm. Perhaps they may not be able to do it even after much studying. Xu Cheng was still the chairman, and this was distressing. These older subordinates may possibly become mere figureheads when Xu Heng becomes the chairman and given the same level of treatment as a manager, allowed to receive money even without work so that they could retire. Naturally, after working for the Xu clan their entire lives, the benefits they received wouldn't be little. After all, as their age piled on, they really wouldn't be able to catch up, so it wasn't a bad idea to retire, leaving their position to the youngsters to continue the work. After Wan Jing left the office, she started to investigate those under Qin Yuhua. If she found any of them with issues, they would see each other in court. If there were those who weren't able to cause a mess yet, they would take all the evidence relating to Qin Yuhua and force them to resign themselves, and if they won't admit it, won't leave. If you've been given the easy way out but won't take it, they would just cause them to make a mistake during work, and fire them immediately. And those with relationships unclear with Qin Yushuo would be sent to sub-companies. Xu Heng was too uncompromising, he didn't leave anyone any space to breathe at all. Showing no kindness at all, they all thought that Xu Heng would be reprimanded. There were no fools in the board of directors, the ones who were made to leave were all Xu Heng's family, they were too lazy to care about that, so the groundless gossips stopped at those who knew, the leeches were gone so who wouldn't be happy about receiving more bonuses. In the evening, Xu Heng came to the presidential suite and even had a beautifully wrapped box in hand. Xu Ning was very curious and got up to receive it. For me. Is there someone else in here? Xu Ning swept a glance over to Xu Heng and sat pleasantly back on the sofa, unwrapping it happily. This was, with his face covered in black lines, he lifted up the translucent black silk leotard. Do you like it? It's the newest model, try it on. Xu Heng was taking his clothes off, but in truth his body was starting to feel hot. My ass, I'm trying it. Xu Ning's mouth twitched. Brother, why don't you wear it? I'll wear a cuddly bear pajama set later, okay? He said it as if Xu Ning was just making a fuss for nothing. Can I wear the bear outfit instead and you can have this silk one? Xu Ning refused him, but Xu Heng prepared the bath water and hauled Xu Ning off into the bath. Xu Ning wanted to cry but no tears came out, he didn't even know if he would be let off. He held his face, he didn't want to let off Xu Heng either. Sitting naked in the bathroom, you'll scrub my back and I'll wash your body, it was quite the pleasure. Especially for Xu Heng, he was so serious in washing him, washing back and forth, rubbing the two little beans so much they started to harden. Several sounds would occasionally leak out from Xu Ning. Xu Heng really has gone overboard. Xu Ning accepted that there was nothing he could do, all he wanted to do was roll around in bed, doing it anywhere else was too embarrassing. Every time Xu Heng seemed as if he had an inkling to do something, Xu Ning would put out the fire. Xu Heng had already tried but his little brother wouldn't have any of it, so he could only take the initiative. He carried him out and wiped him dry, then poured 2 glasses of wine, swirling them as he walked. Watching the red color swirl, Xu Ning's eyes brightened up. Great, he never drank any all this while, so he will enjoy himself tonight. Xu Heng passed a glass over to Xu Ning with an unhurried gaze, and Xu Ning drank it without any suspicions, he was very satisfied. The two lay in bed, chatting naked, and Xu Heng's hand had not been idle through the whole thing. Xu Ning was also a bit bolder, clinging to the muscles he had been peeping at for a long time now. They were smooth, wonderful, with a pleasant feeling. His legs were extremely praiseworthy as well, with a thin layer of muscles, so good. Xu Ning was getting tipsy, and his entire body reddened, he didn't even know whether he was feeling hot or embarrassed. Xu Heng gave Xu Ning a bit more to drink when room service came. Xu Heng's men entered, not looking at anything, then left after pushing in the dining cart. His brother was a calm person and the Xu Ning hiding in the blanket wasn't afraid of being exposed, so naughtily he opened his mouth, and chomped down on the little bean. He could feel Xu Heng's body trembling, even his muscles had gone stiff. Ha ha ha, Xu Ning couldn't resist feeling pleased about himself, he was almost tearing up in laughter, so he leaned over mischievously and played tricks on Xu Heng's firm abs. Is he having too much fun? Xu Heng endured it and beads of sweat could be seen forming on his head, and his hand could finally hold on no longer, gripping tight on the blanket. Eat your food first. No, I'll eat you up if you don't. Xu Ning was a bottom after all and he still needed to save some face, so he came out unhappily from the blanket. Xu Heng quickly put the little leotard on him with a small pair of black silk undies underneath, attached with a bunny tail behind. They've done it big this time. Xu Ning couldn't resist looking up. Why do I have to wear bunny ears? This is unscientific. Brother, you have to wear one too. And who was Xu Heng? He had already prepared everything before this, so he magically pulled out a round pair of ears, putting them on his head. He was only wearing a thong on him so it looked sexy and wild. The sight made Shu Ning stunned and swallowed his saliva unconsciously. Please God, never let anyone see his big brother this way, that would be a sin. But actually that was also what Shu Heng thought. The room was air-conditioned and the temperature was set pretty high so they didn't have to worry about the cold. After their meal, they had a little more to drink. When Shu Ning was pushed down dizzily onto the sofa by Shu Heng, he even smiled like a fool, stretching his little claws over to Shu Heng's armpits and giving them a tickle, then moving down to touch his waist. Shu Heng's mouth curled into a smile. Are you done messing about? Big brother is nagging me. The drunk Shu Ning was different from the usual him, he was a dynamic go-getter. He pouted his little lips and was unhappy. What will you do if I'm not? Then it's my turn. Ha! Shu Ning was dumbfounded, and immediately shook his head after. No no no, I can't compete with you, it's too unfair, I'm not playing anymore. What kind of reasoning is that? You can't expect not to receive what you give. And so Shu Heng began to fight back. He was very powerful, there was no way Shu Ning could hold him off at all. He had so much fun that his little face was flushed red, pleading constantly, his body wiggling about. The gun had already gone off. Shu Heng sucked in a breath and looked at him with a deep and dark gaze, filled with a light tinge of a flame. At the opportune moment, he lowered his head fiercely, kissing down on those small lips, and deepening their kiss. Shu Ning had felt it too, he held on to Shu Heng's neck and responded to his kiss, wrapping himself around him and even raised his leg to curl around him. He wouldn't be so coquettish usually, it had a bit to do with the alcohol. Shu Heng had succeeded and sieged the city even more unscrupulously. The sparks they rubbed out today were too big. Shu Heng didn't even care that his phone was ringing and didn't even spare it a glance, he threw it out directly to be done with it. Shu Ning was panting, he couldn't keep up with Shu Heng's rhythm, he didn't even realize the tiny bit of cover on him had been taken off. He only felt that the place that was being used felt slightly painful, so he hammered at his big brother's chest, giving off a wanton feeling that was filled with complaint. It was fascinating, and his fluttering eyes looked soft like silk. Shu Heng felt his heart tingle just watching him, and changed to a different area to make his attack, not even letting go of his calves. Oh God, it's too exciting, shaking and swaying, they were almost even falling down to the ground. Shu Ning panted and moaned, then a light covered his eyes, it came out. He was slightly out of it, but Shu Heng was extremely gentle with him. He rested a short while for Shu Ning to come back to his senses before continuing his ride. Brother ah, brother. Heng, call me Heng. Heng, slower. Slow down. If Shu Heng could slow down right now he would have been possessed. The sounds of pa 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 sounded out, and it wasn't until he came out that it stopped. Shu Heng looked at the time, it was still alright, not too long, probably wouldn't be too hard on Shu Ning. Shu Heng was too thoughtful, not forgetting to kiss the little one after the deed and comfort him properly. Shu Ning had no energy left in his body and his eyes were hazy, as if he were up in the clouds, unsure of where he was. How pitiful. Shu Heng kissed him and licked him, then Shu Ning was rubbed around in a daze, his body resting on its side, and his thighs resting across Shu Heng's body. Shu Heng looked at the soft little Shu Ning and his hand had already started roaming around his entrance. Shu Ning was drunk right now so he was tired and didn't want to move. Shu Heng had started to prepare for his future happiness, slowly, bit by bit, he couldn't rush things forward. First his middle finger, slathered with a lubricant prepared from their own bodies, there was no need for special preparation. Shu Ning's body had gone stiff, something that didn't belong to him entered. Oh, could he rest peacefully that way? God! Brother! What are you doing? Be good, relax, big brother is catching worms for you. No, it'll be fine, relax, it will hurt if you don't. Chapter 100. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Coaxing little kids. He laughed out loud. Shu Ning was drunk, but that didn't mean he had turned into a fool. Right when he was relaxed and about to tease him, he was invaded. Oh, Xu Ning felt all sorts of feelings in his heart. His big brother's IQ was too high, succeeding in just a few words. Right now nothing was better than just closing his eyes and feel the feeling of being pampered and cherished by someone. Nobody had ever touched that place in his past life, so he had to make good use of it in this one. The careful movements of his big brother that did not mind the trouble caused Xu Ning to feel very happy. The alcohol was getting to his head and his eyelids was starting to feel heavier. This atmosphere was too good and Xu Ning was afraid that he would fall asleep and miss it, so he couldn't resist saying something. Brother, I like you so much. His body shook and his heart trembled in surprise. Xu Heng quickly expressed his feelings. I like you a lot too. With a smile, Xu Ning kissed Xu Heng on his forehead and really couldn't stand keeping up anymore, thus he slept. For his first time being poked around over there, it felt very strange and had a swelling feeling as the finger moved about. Xu Ning wanted to remember this, so he really couldn't bear to just fall asleep like that, but he didn't have the energy for it, especially with the added alcohol, so he could only regret it later. Xu Heng had done it on purpose. If he drank alcohol his mind would become more muddled, so naturally he would not refuse nor struggle, and when one happened to would come along, he would get used to it. His fingers were opening him up bit by bit, carefully. Xu Ning had only slept for about 2 hours, it was only 8 o'clock, he rubbed his eyes and with a tight feeling on his waist, his chin was bitten by Xu Heng. Brother, why is he always like this, so annoying, he's doing whatever he wants again. Let me rest for a while. You should be hungry, what do you want to eat? Can I eat you? Xu Ning flexed the muscles on his behind, it felt a little numb, rather uncomfortable but not unbearable. Did he play with it with only his fingers? Why not the big sausage? Xu Ning thought that if he didn't bait him over, that Xu Heng would pounce over by himself, but now it seems that he had been too naive. Xu Heng still would not make his move as long as he had not reached adulthood. _, I want to get eaten so badly. The little one was unhappy again. Xu Heng lowered his head down to nudge affectionately at his face. Did you not like that? I won't do it next time. Xu Ning pursed his lips and stared at Xu Heng with much grief, staring hard. This is too much, do I have to take the initiative to tell you to fuck me before you think it's possible? Xu Ning pondered about it gloomily. If Xu Heng really didn't jump him, a year or 2 would still be fine, but he would really go mad if it were 4 years, he may even achieve the amazing feat of forcing the top. His little brother had the look of a daredevil. Xu Heng picked up the landline phone to make a call because the screen of his mobile phone had gone black and can't be used. The bodyguard pushed the dining cart in, the one that was pushed out earlier had already been eaten up by the bodyguards in the hall. Xu Ning waited to hear the door closing before he came out of the blanket, then sat between Xu Heng's legs. The two then picked up their chopsticks together and ate. It felt strange and awkward, so Xu Ning wanted to sit by himself, but Xu Heng wouldn't allow it, reason being he was afraid that his waist would hurt. At that time Xu Ning's face was covered with black lines, but for the sake of shutting up Xu Heng, he could only do as he wished. It's not like he really entered, annoying. Xu Ning's stomach wasn't too big, so he was already full. Are we not going home? Do you want to go home? We can't. Xu Ning's face reddened. They would be done for if they were seen by their dad, useless, gone, done for. What are you afraid of? Of course you're not afraid. Xu Ning took a sip of water. Old man Xu Qing wouldn't beat Xu Heng up, he couldn't even love him enough, so how could he hurt him? He would always see the two of them enjoying themselves together, talking about the company, cooperations, and which person seemed good and could be kept or promoted or whatnot, and Xu Ning never had a part in such warm moments. Sometimes Xu Ning would think, what would his dad do if he found out about the relationship between his two sons? Would he hit me? Kick me out? Or disown me? Anyway, whatever happens he would absolutely not hurt Xu Heng. Xu Ning had confidence in the relationship between Xu Cheng and Xu Heng, but he did not have as much confidence towards himself. Xu Qing gave Xu Ning his parental love, and even liked him a lot, but not as much as he gave Shu Heng. "What are you thinking about?" Shu Heng lifted the little one's desolate face. "It won't do for him to be this afraid, we will have to face this together in the future, he should start to get him used to it now. I was just thinking, what would happen if Dad saw us doing what we did earlier?" "It won't happen, that, I'm just making an example." Shu Ning cared a lot about this, he won't let Shu Heng back off from this. Shu Heng did not intend to back off at all. "If Dad ever catches us doing that, it wouldn't have been arranged by anyone else, I would have been the only one who could arrange it. Ning Ning, you have to believe in me, okay?" "Okay, oh, do you still want to go home?" Shu Heng gave the little meat on Shu Ning's face a pinch, it was soft and nice to touch. "You're so cute, let's not go back." "This has nothing to do with me being cute, you're powerful so you're not afraid but I am." "Yeah, let's not, I'm covered in strawberries, it'll be easy to spot." "I didn't do it anywhere obvious, look." Shu Heng ran his fingers across those marks, and Shu Ning was petrified on the spot. Shu Heng thought he was cold so he stuffed him into the blanket, and focused on his meal. Shu Ning that my big brother is too shameless, what to do? Requesting live help, this is urgent. The ancestral home on the other side had a strange atmosphere. Shu Heng hung up on me. Shu Cheng's face had gone blank on the spot. High complexion was normal but this is what his heart looked like. Sigma, degree, their children have grown up, they're adults now and need their own space. Shu Qing did not feel like this when Shu Heng was overseas, it was fine if his big brother didn't pick up his call, but he even shut off his phone. Something must have happened. Shu Cheng was a wise man so he immediately contacted Shu Heng's bodyguards, the few of them would be by Shu Heng's side no matter what he was doing. The bodyguard did not pick up the call but they sent him a text message, "All is well." Shu Qing sighed in relief, that meant that everything was normal, maybe Shu Heng had something to attend to so he had to shut off his phone for now. "What's got you so out of sorts?" Qin Yushua came over scantily clad in a nightdress, and a smile on her face, looking gentle and virtuous. "Are the kids not coming home?" The two are together with the bodyguards watching over them, just let them have their fun, you're still sick from your cold so let's go to sleep. Shu Qing raised his head to look at the clock, it was only 9, he would sleep at 11 or 12 in the past, there were many things he had to deal with in the study, he really had to give it to Shu Heng, leaving the company at 5 o'clock every day, dealing with his own private businesses at night, he was clearly so busy and yet he had a bunch of time to spare for Shu Ning. What a good relationship they have. Shu Qing stretched his waist, he had never done this outside, only Qin Yushua had seen him do this. Shu Cheng's voice was deep. "Shu Heng will be going back to country next Monday, I wonder if Ning Ning will hang about for another day or two." "Honey, if Heng leaves then Ning Ning would probably feel very lonely, how about you stick with him more? I myself am planning to go over to my hometown to take a look." As that topic came up, Shu Cheng's heart jumped. He had trapped her in the island to punish her but had forgotten that she had no way to sweep the graves, that was too unfilial. Shu Cheng nodded his head and agreed, and returned Qin Yushua's old car keys, cards, and whatnot. Shu Cheng liked Qin Yushua, he hoped that she could change for the better, if not, even if Shu Cheng could choose to forgive her time and time again out of love, Shu Heng would not. Humans are complicated, they would not give their lover the death sentence because they've done wrong once or twice, they may even cover it up and repay their debts. The only reason Qin Yushua would fail was completely because she trusted Shu Ning. If not for Shu Ning selling her out, Qin Yushua would have become a celebrity in Sea City. After a night of romance, Qin Yushua spent a lot of effort and finally did it with Shu Qing again, the two reconciled and were close as ever. In the hotel, the atmosphere between Shu Heng and Shu Ning was even better, they were even sharing food mouth to mouth. Their breakfast had been so sweet, with sparks flying everywhere. The two were leaning next to each other, chatting naked under a big blanket, and would kiss and touch each other every so often, then when they had a feeling they would go for another round. The parts that were red from the friction had been restored to normal, into the alluring snowy white it once was. Xu Heng gave it a go, and Xu Ning was wriggling around, not very resistant, so he immediately pressed him down and paw 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 paw. After that, Xu Ning lay on Xu Heng's chest panting, his fingers drawing circles lazily. Because of their strenuous exercise, his chest was heaving up and down as well. "Brother, don't you have to go to the office?" The voice of his little brother was quite hoarse from calling out. Xu Heng understood, and so came another romantic and intense kiss, wet and sloppy. Xu Ning moaned subconsciously, luring Xu Heng so much that he heated up and wanted to have another go again. Xu Heng had been enduring for so long, you could say he had his fill of meat now, so could he not be in a rush and not excited? If he could, he would want to stick to Xu Ning all the time. Xu Ning had gotten his chance to breathe, and he immediately reached out to his brother's chest. He couldn't resist groping them a little. "No, don't, I can't anymore, brother, don't you have to go to work?" "I do, let's go together." "No no 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 you go, I have to go home." "Didn't you say you were afraid of Dad seeing the marks?" "I accidentally bit your neck earlier, Ning Ning, it's your brother's fault." "Now how was it your fault?" "I wonder who said yesterday with full confidence that, if we were found out, then I would have been the only one who could arrange it. It can't be." It felt a little as if he had fallen into his big brother's plans. Xu Ning liked being together with him, really, but allowing their private feelings to outweigh their public duty was bad. Facing his big brother's deep and dark eyes, Xu Ning had no way of refusing him, even his words had been swallowed back into his mouth. "I'll just stick around till the afternoon, then I will return home after lunch so that I can have my rest. I trust my big brother won't try to keep him any longer." His ideas were great, but reality was cruel. Xu Heng brought Xu Ning to work and rode the elevator up to the top floor. All his secretaries and special assistants lowered his head to greet him, and Xu Heng replied with an Xu Ning had also been greeted as young master. A large sofa was placed right next to the chairman's table. With one look you could tell that it was put there for Xu Ning to sit, and there was even a small table. It was too amazing. With this speed, it must have been planned in advance. Doesn't matter, the real chairman wasn't here anyway, and the acting chairman was the king. Xu Ning also wanted to look at Xu Heng's serious working face, then secretly take a photo of it with his phone. "I'll be able to look at it when he's not around," easing the pain of lovesickness a little. When Xu Ning sat down, Xu Heng personally adjusted the little table and put his laptop on top of it. "There is information and reports in here, you can look at whatever you want, there are games too, just tell me when you're thirsty or bored." Xu Ning was obedient. He won't touch the company's business, but he was very keen on the games. "Brother, the net is being developed more and more, and I think that large-scale online games are doing quite well overseas. They're starting to get popular in our country too. Don't you have any interest in this slice of cake?" Xu Ning, who had his experience from his past life, would naturally know what made money. His brain cells tingled. He wanted to bring Xu Heng up high. The great god had wings and I'm just shining more light onto them, he. It felt as if he were drawing legs on a snake. Xu Heng was already so powerful, did he really need my help? Xu Heng raised an eyebrow. The little one drooped his head down as soon as he gave his suggestion. It wasn't good to have low self-esteem. Xu Ning's body stiffened up, because Xu Heng had suddenly come over, and shrouded over him.